It begins not in darkness, but in the delay that light takes to reach us, 8 gentle minutes between the sun's true expression and our quiet perception of it. In those minutes, the sunlight that warms your face is already a message from the past, a tender echo of what once flared on the surface of that immense star. Each photon, having traveled the cosmic gulf at impossible speed, carries not only warmth but memory, a silent reminder that all illumination is borrowed from another time. The world beneath this ancient light continues unaware, basking in the glow of something that has already changed. The quietness of those 8 minutes holds an invisible rhythm, the steady hum of a universe that doesn't hurry, even as it moves faster than thought. Within that delay, the breeze sighs through leaves, oceans shimmer with liquid gold, and people glance at skies that belong to a slightly older world. Every reflection in a window, every sparkle on water, is part of that illusion of presence. The light we see has already left the sun behind, slipping across a vacuum where sound cannot follow. It is a silent messenger, bringing warmth but not a whisper of its origin. If one could pause time, standing in those minutes of travel, the light itself would appear as a serene river, endless, radiant, and untouchable. You would see Earth as a tiny world wrapped in a soft cocoon of delay, living always a few minutes behind the pulse of its parent star. The thought is gentle, almost comforting, that we are never entirely in the present, but always cradled in the afterglow of what has already been. Life unfolds within that patient interval, never rushing, never realizing the gap between its heartbeat and the sun's. In those 8 minutes, countless events occur both above and below. A solar flare may burst forth, unseen and yet destined to arrive as a future ripple of energy. On Earth, waves collapse, lovers smile, shadows shift. None of them realize that the light painting their moments was born before the breath they just took. The illusion of simultaneity binds everything, a quiet thread connecting the infinite distance with the ordinary now. It is a soft deception the universe maintains, so we may live without noticing the vastness between us and our light. The delay itself is like a cosmic sigh, the universe reminding us that even light, the swiftest traveler, needs time. It is a delay so short that no human notices, and yet, in cosmic terms, it is vast. That gentle stretch of space holds the invisible labor of energy crossing 93 million miles of emptiness. And when it arrives, it doesn't rush or announce itself. It simply rests upon the world, turning darkness into color, absence into sight, and silence into life. The 8-minute journey ends quietly, as if it never began. If you were to look toward the sun now, you would see not what is, but what was. The star before you is slightly younger in your eyes than in truth, a faint, golden ghost of its own past. Every second, that gap widens, refilled by new waves of light setting out on their journey. The sun, patient and constant, continues its burning dance, sending forth messages that will find us 8 minutes later, when our moment finally meets theirs. It's a soft rhythm, this cycle of delay and arrival, the heartbeat of connection between two worlds. Imagine, for a moment, the light as a traveler beginning its voyage. Born deep within the sun's core, it spends thousands of years bouncing from atom to atom, trapped in a labyrinth of heat and radiation before finally breaking free into open space. By the time it leaves the surface, that single particle of light has already lived 1,000 lifetimes. Its final sprint across space, those mere 8 minutes, is its moment of freedom, the culmination of an eternity's wandering. And in that freedom, it finds us. The world it reaches is unaware of its age. A sunrise spills across oceans, cities, and mountains as though newly born. Yet the light that paints that dawn began its existence when ancient civilizations were still dreaming in the ashes of the past. Every morning is both new and old, a reunion of forgotten light with a waiting world. Perhaps that is why the beginning of day feels sacred, why silence falls even among birds before the first gleam touches the horizon. They, too, seem to sense the quiet reunion taking place. When light meets the earth, it becomes everything: warmth on skin, gold in the river, life in the leaf. Its journey ends, but its transformation begins. In every green blade, photosynthesis hums softly, converting sunlight into the pulse of existence. In every human face, reflected light reveals emotion, thought, and identity. Those 8 minutes of travel, once spent in cosmic isolation, now ripple through the living tapestry of the planet. The distance collapses into presence, the void becomes nourishment. But if the sun were to vanish this very instant, we would not. No, not yet. The sky would continue glowing in false comfort, the world bathed in a warmth that no longer exists. For 8 quiet minutes, Earth would live in a dream, unaware of loss, its life sustained by the final light still crossing the abyss. It is a haunting thought that we are always a little late to reality, always living in the echo of what was. Yet, perhaps, that delay is mercy, time enough to breathe before the darkness arrives. The beauty of that delay lies in its gentleness. It is the universe's way of cushioning truth with distance, of softening the harsh instantaneity of change. Those 8 minutes are both buffer and blessing. They remind us that perception is not immediate, that every sunrise is a memory catching up to the moment. Even the light that touches your eyes carries the weight of journey, the patience of travel, the silence of emptiness crossed. To exist is to receive what has already departed and to give, in turn, to those yet to come. Light does not rush us. It arrives steadily, tenderly, wrapping the earth in quiet continuity. Through that steady arrival, life has learned rhythm, day and night, warmth and coolness, awakening and rest. The 8-minute delay is woven into this pattern, invisible but essential. Without it, existence would lose its breath, its space for reflection. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, built delay into its design, as though to remind every world that beauty is not in immediacy, but in patience. Those photons, so small and countless, never hesitate. They scatter through atmosphere and cloud, bend upon water and glass, enter eyes and leaves and stone. Each one completes its purpose, to illuminate. Yet behind every glimmer lies the truth that what we see has already passed. The sun's surface may have changed, flared, trembled, and we remain unaware, seeing only its past self. This quiet dissonance between what is and what was creates the tender illusion we call now. If one could listen to light, perhaps it would hum like an ancient lullaby, soft, continuous, filled with longing. It has seen the birth of worlds and the fall of empires, traveling unchanged through time's vast corridors. And when it reaches us, it does not boast of its distance or speed. It simply shines, carrying warmth and comfort. In those 8 minutes, it has witnessed silence and storms, darkness and the glitter of dust, yet it arrives with calm certainty, asking for nothing in return. Even at night, when the sun hides beyond the curve of the world, the delay lingers in the memory of things. The earth glows faintly with borrowed warmth, holding on to the light that just departed. Stars shimmer in their own delays, some sending light that began its journey before humanity ever existed. The universe, in truth, is made of ancient radiance, each beam a message from the past, weaving a tapestry of delayed stories across the sky. To think of delay as distance is to miss its poetry. Delay is the language of time written in light, the way the universe whispers softly instead of shouting its truths. We are not cheated by it, we are blessed by its tenderness. Those 8 minutes are a gift, a reminder that life need not be instant to be alive. The gap between event and awareness is what allows wonder to exist. For if everything were immediate, there would be no room for or only motion without meaning. In the gentle hush of evening, as the sun sinks and the sky burns amber, that same 8-minute truth lingers. The light you watch fading began its farewell long before you saw it. The horizon glows not with what is happening, but with what has already ended. Yet it feels eternal, doesn't it? That is the grace of delay, to let endings look like continuations, to let light linger just long enough for beauty to settle in the soul. Somewhere, a child might raise their hand toward the sunlight, trying to grasp it, unaware that they are holding history. In that touch lies connection, the merging of human warmth with cosmic time. The delay doesn't separate us from the sun, it joins us to its rhythm. We live within its heartbeat, always 8 minutes behind, yet forever caught up in its song. The distance is vast, but the light makes it feel close, personal, alive. The quiet delay also mirrors our own existence. Every thought, every memory, every look backward is a form of delayed light, reflections of moments that have already moved on. We, too, are travelers of time, illuminated by what has passed. To understand this is not sadness, but serenity. It means to live gently, to honor the slow unfolding of awareness. Like sunlight, our understanding of life always arrives a little late, but when it does, it glows with warmth and truth. Perhaps that is why sunsets make us still. In that fading gold, we sense the pause between what was and what will be, the moment suspended within delay. We are watching the last light of something already gone, yet we call it beautiful. The universe has taught us to find comfort in the past that still shines. The 8-minute delay is not a flaw of time, but its melody, the rhythm that lets the world breathe in synchrony with the stars. And so, as the sun continues to burn and light continues to travel, those 8 minutes remain unchanged, a bridge between fire and life, between distance and presence. It is within that quiet interval that we exist, dream, and awaken. Each day, light arrives, older than we imagine yet perfectly on time, reminding us gently that we, too, are part of a journey moving through the universe with our own quiet delays, our own soft echoes of light. It would not arrive with thunder or flame, but with a deep and wordless hush. The moment the last rays fade, there would be no announcement, only the quiet absence of what once was constant. The skies, once painted with warmth and rhythm, would turn still, unmoving, stripped of their golden heartbeat. For 8 minutes, the illusion of light would linger, but then the truth would come like a sigh that cannot be undone. The sun's departure would mark not just an ending of day, but the unraveling of all memory that ever basked beneath its glow. At first, no one would understand. The world would seem dimmer, softer, as if clouds had drawn themselves endlessly across the heavens. But this dusk would not lift. There would be no coming dawn to wash the world in renewal. The oceans, stripped of shimmer, would become vast shadows of silence, and forests would turn to silhouettes against an unending twilight. The first unblinking night would not roar, it would simply arrive, like sleep gently closing the eye of the world forever. Then, the temperature would begin to fall, slowly, tenderly, like a fading breath. Without the sun's distant fire, warmth would bleed away from the soil, from the air, from the bones of mountains. The wind would carry the ghost of summer but no longer the promise of morning. Every living thing would feel it, not as pain, but as a quiet forgetting. Leaves would stiffen, rivers would still. The earth would drift into the calm of a body surrendering to slumber, the kind that does not wake. Stars would bloom where the sun once ruled, timidly at first, then freely, filling the emptiness with cold, ancient light. They would shine without interruption, without competition, watching Earth in silence. Their radiance would not warm, but it would observe. The night would become an endless tapestry of distant suns, countless fires that could not touch the world they adorned. For the first time, darkness would not be a pause between days but the world's permanent state of being. Cities, once pulsing with electric imitation of daylight, would hold on to their glow for a while. Humanity, stubborn and trembling, would try to create its own sun in lamps, in screens, in fires. Yet beneath those fragile lights would linger the awareness that they were temporary sparks in an infinite dark. No bulb, no blaze could replace the steady, life-giving pulse that once rose over horizons. The world would learn what true night means, not absence, but completion. The seas would mirror the new darkness, deepening into opaque pools of silence. Without sunlight, plankton, those tiny gardeners of the ocean, would fade, and with them, the rhythm of life below. The once living blues and greens would be replaced by an unbroken depth of black. Yet even there, in the abyss, small glimmers would persist, bioluminescent creatures flickering softly, as though remembering what the sun once was. Their delicate light would become Earth's final poetry. In the first unblinking night, the moon would still be there, but only as a ghostly scar. It would reflect nothing, for there would be nothing left to borrow. Its surface would be a dark wound against the deeper dark, suspended in silence. No tides would follow its pull, the oceans would still, frozen in reverence. The moon, once a companion of reflected warmth, would become a relic of lost illumination, a memory of borrowed radiance fading into solitude. The air would begin to crystallize, molecules slowing their endless motion, surrendering to stillness. Snow, fine and silent, might fall for the last time, not from clouds, but from condensation freezing in the upper layers of the atmosphere. It would drift gently, softly, like the ashes of vanished light, settling upon a world turning to glass. The ground would shine faintly under the starlight, fragile and cold, a mirror reflecting nothing but the eternal night above. Animals would quiet, as though sensing the turning of an invisible key. Birds would not sing, for dawn would no longer exist in their memory. The forests would become vast sanctuaries of stillness, filled with the soft creak of branches freezing mid-breath. Life, in its infinite instinct, would begin to sleep not in despair, but in resignation. The unblinking night would cradle them, as if nature itself knew. That silence is the final kindness of the universe. Within the bones of the planet, warmth would remain for a time, the deep fire of Earth's heart refusing to yield so quickly. Volcanoes would still glow in the dark, red veins pulsing faintly beneath the blackened skin of continents. Steam would rise from fissures, painting temporary ghosts against the air. For a while, humanity might gather near those fires, huddling close, worshipping the last echoes of the sun hidden inside their own planet's body. In that darkness, time would feel different, slower, softer, like the echo of a heartbeat in a sealed room. Without sunrise or sunset to measure the hours, days would dissolve into an eternal now. Clocks would continue to tick, but their rhythm would lose meaning. The concept of morning would become a story, told by the last voices who still remembered it. And even those memories would fade, replaced by the acceptance that night is no longer half of time, it is all of it. Some would still look upward, seeking hope among the stars. Perhaps they would see not despair, but serenity, the sky's true face, unveiled at last. Without the sun's dominance, the galaxy would stretch vast and endless, every star a promise of continuity elsewhere. The unblinking night, in its stillness, would reveal beauty unknown to those who lived under day. For the first time, the Earth would see the universe as it truly is: infinite, silent, eternal. Plants, those ancient companions of light, would quietly bow into darkness. They would stop reaching upward and begin to close inward, folding their leaves like closing hands. Their green would fade to shadow, their roots retreating into the soil as if seeking warmth from memories long gone. The forests would become sculptures of sleep, frozen in the gesture of growth that will never be completed. Yet even in their stillness, they would remain graceful, nature's final lullaby. The oceans would whisper no more, yet beneath the ice, a few stubborn lives would flicker, microbes, extremophiles, guardians of persistence. They would not mourn the sun, for they had never known it. In their quiet chemistry, they would continue to breathe in the absence of light, proving that even when the universe dims, life does not vanish instantly, it hums on in defiance, soft as a dream refusing to fade. Humanity, too, would whisper stories. Around dwindling fires, people would speak of the days when the sky turned blue and warmth kissed their faces. They would tell children of the sun not as a god, but as a memory too vast to comprehend. The first unblinking night would shape new myths, born from longing. Light, once taken for granted, would become sacred again, an ancient promise retold under skies that would never brighten. Eventually, sound itself would seem to fade. The air would grow heavy and still, carrying no birdsong, no breeze, no distant laughter. Even the oceans, now frozen beneath their own weight, would no longer whisper. The earth would become a monument to silence, a sphere suspended between starlight and shadow. The first unblinking night would stretch endlessly, and within it, everything that once moved would find peace. But not all would end in sorrow. The universe does not mourn, it transforms. The earth, now wrapped in quiet, would continue to orbit where the sun once shone, tracing a path through the darkness. Other stars would cast faint glimmers upon it, like distant lanterns guiding a traveler through endless night. Even without its sun, the planet would remain part of the cosmic dance, not forgotten, only changed, drifting among its luminous kin. In the stillness, the boundaries between past and present would dissolve. The last humans who looked to the heavens might feel an ancient understanding that this darkness was always meant to come, that nothing burns forever. They would see that the sun's absence is not a punishment, but a return. Every star is born to shine, and every light is born to rest. The night, unblinking and vast, is simply the universe closing its eyes for a while. And perhaps, somewhere across the galaxy, other beings would look toward the place where our sun once glowed, noticing its quiet disappearance. They might wonder about the world that once circled it, the lives that bloomed and vanished beneath its warmth. In their own skies, They might see our darkness as a faint reminder that even stars have lifetimes, and that endings, too, are beautiful in their stillness. As the centuries pass, the Earth would cool completely. Ice would cover continents, oceans would freeze to their core, and mountains would sleep beneath crystal mantles. The planet would shine faintly in reflected starlight, like a pearl adrift in an endless sea of black. It would not decay or vanish, it would rest, preserved in silence. The first unblinking night would become eternal, a state of calm so complete that even memory would surrender to it. And yet, within that silence, something eternal would remain, not light, but the echo of it. In every frozen atom, in every grain of dust, the memory of warmth would still hum faintly, like a lullaby long forgotten but not erased. The first unblinking night would not be death, but peace, the moment when all motion finally breathes out and becomes one with the dark. The sun would be gone, but the story of its light would continue to travel, endlessly, through the vast and waiting void. The Earth moves in its familiar circle, steady and calm, even as the light above has faded. There is a strange rhythm to the quiet oceans turning beneath a pale sky, winds adjusting to colder drafts that sweep in slow spirals. The orbit continues, held by invisible hands of gravity that have not loosened their grasp. It feels almost as if the planet is breathing softly, keeping balance between what was once bright and what is now dim. The moon still pulls at the tides, guiding their slow retreat, and night and day begin to merge into something that feels neither. The continents rest beneath veils of frost that creep downward from the poles. In the absence of sunlight, thermal echoes from the Earth's core rise gently to fill the void, spreading warmth just enough to keep movement alive beneath the crust. Rivers shrink into glassy ribbons, locking themselves into stillness. Yet above the land, faint traces of aurora shimmer, a final conversation between magnetic fields and the silent particles drifting from the void. The planet hums faintly, a low vibration that reminds the universe it still turns. The orbit remains perfect, as though nothing has changed, though everything has. The gravitational bond with the now dark sun holds firm, for even a dead star's pull endures. It is a strange loyalty, matter clinging to memory, to the shape of what once shone. Earth circles the corpse of its parent star, obedient, unaware that it is now locked in a dance with a ghost. The silence deepens each revolution, but the motion persists with mechanical precision, a rhythm that the cosmos does not forget. Oceans still move beneath thickening ice sheets, a secret motion beneath layers of cold armor. The creatures that adapted to the dark linger there, feeding on warmth and minerals that seep upward from fissures. Tiny sparks of life pulse like heartbeats in the deep, unaware of the sky's emptiness above. They have no memory of dawn, no expectation of its return. Their world is stable, slow, and continuous, like the orbit. Itself unbroken, unfazed by the absence of light. High above, the atmosphere has begun to settle into thinner gradients. Without the daily stirring of sunlight, the air rests heavier and colder, its movement sluggish. Clouds, now colorless, drift without contrast or reflection. Yet even in that stillness, faint electric discharges crackle through them, small flickers of energy in a universe that resists total silence. The magnetic shield remains intact, deflecting cosmic whispers, guarding what remains of the ancient planet's breath. Mountains, untouched by warmth, begin to change shape in subtle ways. Ice fills their crevices, grinding slowly as gravity continues its patient sculpting. Avalanches no longer roar, they sigh as they fall, cushioned by layers of soft frost. Time seems stretched, as though each hour lengthens into something endless. Yet beneath the surface, tectonic plates still drift, centimeters at a time, pushed by the Earth's molten heart that refuses to die. Even without light, creation continues in secret. Forests long gone leave their fossil shadows etched into stone. The air carries no scent now, but in the soil, microscopic life persists, feeding on chemical traces. Deep in frozen caverns, ancient spores wait, patient, suspended, timeless. They have survived epochs before and may again. The silence above is no threat to them. It is merely another phase in an unbroken cycle of dormancy and awakening. Earth's memory of life does not fade easily. It only slows, curled inward like a hibernating seed. As the planet turns, The stars around it begin to drift slightly from their old constellations. Without the sun's brilliance, the distant galaxies appear sharper, colder, and infinite. The night sky has become a permanent ocean of light, the only glow left to touch the frozen world. Earth's orbit continues its silent arc through this sea, steady and unyielding. Time feels almost halted, though the movement remains a paradox of eternal stillness in perpetual motion. The moon's face glows faintly with reflected starlight. It too remains loyal, circling Earth with the same rhythm it has known for billions of years. Its gravitational pull shapes tides beneath the ice, stirring currents in the hidden oceans. The old bond between Earth and Moon endures, a small partnership in the vast quiet. From space, their slow dance looks unchanged, though the warmth that once tied them to life is gone. The choreography of gravity knows no grief. As millennia pass, the crust thickens with frost. Glaciers emerge and expand until continents seem to blend beneath a universal white. The seas no longer rise or fall, they are locked in peace. Winds sculpt the surface into pale dunes of ice and dust, soft curves frozen in motion. The landscape becomes smooth, silent, and strangely graceful. There is no decay anymore, only preservation. Time's hand has turned gentle, freezing every gesture into permanence. In the hidden mantle, the Earth's heat still stirs molten rivers. Volcanic vents breathe faintly, their exhalations carrying warmth to the deep oceans. Around these plumes, ecosystems thrive, unbothered by the loss of the sun. Life bends itself into new shapes, glowing softly in the dark, feeding on minerals and heat instead of light. Here, the pulse of the planet remains strong. Evolution whispers onward, unseen, unhurried. On the surface, magnetic storms ripple faintly across the sky. They shimmer like memories of dawn, ghostly reflections of what once was. The auroras shift in slow waves, illuminating the snowfields with pale greens and violets. Even in this darkness, beauty finds its way, quiet, delicate, and almost mournful. The universe never truly allows emptiness. Something always remains to shimmer, to move, to breathe. As cosmic debris drifts by, some of it finds its way toward Earth's orbit. Meteors brush through the upper atmosphere, leaving trails of faint fire that momentarily warm the sky. Each one a visitor, a reminder of distant origins. The planet absorbs them silently, its gravity welcoming these fragments as part of its endless collection. Dust settles on ice, marking time in cosmic layers, a quiet clock made of falling stars. The orbit continues without hesitation. Though the sun has become a dim remnant, its mass still commands. Earth remains tethered, tracing the same ellipse it always has. There is comfort in that constancy, as if the planet itself refuses despair. It simply keeps moving, a survivor of a long companionship. The silence feels sacred now, not empty but eternal, a form of rest earned through eons of struggle and light. The deep core churns on, an unseen furnace that does not depend on the stars. Its iron heart spins, maintaining the magnetic shield that hums faintly through space. This unseen protection is like the planet's last heartbeat, steady, invisible, essential. The core is memory itself, keeping motion alive within the silence. Through it, the Earth still dreams, even without the warmth of its lost sun. Above the surface, frozen dust particles drift in the air, sparkling faintly in starlight. They move slowly, as though the atmosphere itself has forgotten haste. Each glimmer feels like a thought, a remnant of reflection. The planet seems to be thinking now, calmly, endlessly. In the absence of chaos, there is understanding. The silence has become not an end, but a contemplative pause within infinity. Continents subtly shift under the thick ice crust. Pressure builds in unseen chambers, shaping the next era beneath layers of sleep. Mountains that once stood proud are ground to smoother shapes, while new peaks prepare to rise. It is creation happening too slowly to be witnessed, sculpted by the patience of gravity. The planet may appear still, but in its heart, it is always becoming something new. Far beyond, the remnants of the solar system drift in steady silence. Other planets continue their orbits to Jupiter, Saturn, the distant rings of Neptune, each circling the same dead center. The grand machine of celestial motion continues to turn, its parts unaware that the light that once connected them is gone. Yet the architecture remains perfect, a model of balance and endurance in a universe that forgets nothing. On Earth's frozen plains, winds whisper through canyons of ice. The sound is faint, like breathing. It moves across the planet's surface with the gentleness of memory, carrying echoes of forests, oceans, and human voices that once filled the air. There is no listener now, but still the wind speaks. It is as if the earth itself remembers, murmuring to the stars in a language only silence can understand. The orbit holds. It has held for ages, and will for more. Time folds in on itself, and what was once counted in years becomes immeasurable. The earth no longer tracks days, it exists in cycles of motion alone. The universe accepts this, as it does all transformations. Nothing truly stops, everything merely changes its rhythm. The planet continues, graceful in its solitude, endlessly circling the ghost of light. And in that orbit, there is peace. A deep, endless calm where the noise of creation has finally softened. The earth, cradled in its silent path, drifts through eternity not as a tragedy, but as a memory made still. Its rotation hums like a lullaby, its gravity an embrace. Even without warmth, it remains complete, a body at rest, holding steady in the gentle pull of forever. The first deep breath of cold comes slowly, almost politely, as though the universe wishes not to startle what still lingers. It seeps across the seas, threading through the atmosphere like a ghostly hand. The air, once full of motion, begins to still. Each molecule loses some of its restless heat, slowing, curling inward. The oceans respond with whispers, currents weakening, waves softening, tides moving with a tired rhythm. It is not yet a death, but a deep inhale before the long frost begins its descent. The continents respond like creatures settling for sleep. Forests, already brittle and pale, bow under thin crusts of frost. The last pockets of vapor in the air gather into heavy mists that fall gently as ice dust. Mountains shine with crystalline coats, their shadows lengthening into frozen valleys. Each ridge glints faintly in the distant starlight, like the edges of glass. Even sound becomes fragile here. It travels farther, cleaner, as if the cold has sharpened the edges of silence. The oceans, immense and breathing, begin to harden at their skin. Ice sheets stretch from the poles, crawling outward with patient certainty. The process is slow but unstoppable. Layer by layer, millimeter by millimeter, the water locks itself into sleep. Beneath these translucent ceilings, creatures move slower, conserving what warmth remains. Tiny bubbles rise and freeze halfway, capturing memories of motion that will remain trapped for eons. The earth is beginning to store time within its own stillness. As the breath of cold deepens, clouds form lower in the sky. They are no longer white but silver, heavy with frozen dust that never fully falls. They drift endlessly, creating a false ceiling over the planet. The air grows dense, each inhalation a weight. If there were still lungs to breathe it, they would feel the difference, the bite of chill within every molecule, the stiffness of the invisible. The world begins to forget what softness once felt like. Continents crack along their edges where water once flowed. Rivers become ribbons of crystal, suspended mid-motion. Waterfalls freeze into chandeliers, glistening towers of time. The breath of cold is now everywhere, filling even the smallest spaces, into the pores of rock, the grain of soil, the quiet depths of caves. Beneath these layers, heat from the core still pulses, but faintly, too far away to soften the surface. The balance has shifted, and the chill is winning. The sky has turned pale, its colors drained into endless gradients of gray and blue. With the sun gone, there are no true days, only variations of dimness. Stars flicker above like small, distant candles, their reflections faintly mirrored in the glacial crust below. Earth's orbit carries it through this soft twilight, where no dawn breaks and no dusk concludes. The planet has entered the long stillness, where every moment feels the same and every movement takes centuries to complete. Winds evolve into slower, deeper sighs. The great jet streams that once danced around the planet dissolve into wide, sluggish currents. They sculpt ridges of snow and dunes of ice across the continents, like a slow artist tracing patient shapes. Each gust becomes a sculptor's hand, shaping eternity out of cold dust. Sound is muffled, movement hesitant. Only the deep groan of shifting ice sheets remains, echoing like the voice of the world dreaming. Under the crust, however, warmth persists. Pockets of molten rock continue to shift, their heat radiating upward through cracks and fractures. Where it reaches the frozen surface, small outbursts of vapor and steam appear, brief miracles in the white. Around them, frost melts and refreezes in rings, creating patterns like breath on glass. These are the planet's final exhalations of warmth, reminders that the heart beneath the ice still beats, even if the skin has gone numb. Beneath the oceans, geothermal vents continue their silent labor. Around them, strange new life thrives, organisms glowing faintly, feeding on minerals and heat instead of light. They are the quiet survivors of a world in retreat, the children of darkness. To them, the chill above is meaningless. They belong to the warmth that comes from below, to the rhythm of pressure and chemistry. Even in this age of cold, life has found its small, persistent corners. On land, frost creeps into stone. It fills cracks and expands, shattering rocks into fine dust. Over centuries, the surface becomes smoother, more uniform. Mountains wear down, plains flatten. The planet's face is being redrawn not by violence, but by gentleness, by endless, patient freezing. Each crystal of ice is an artist's brushstroke, erasing sharpness, softening memory. The earth becomes a sculpture of stillness, polished by time and temperature. The breath of cold moves higher now, reaching the upper atmosphere. The last gases that once escaped into space slow their drift. The magnetosphere shimmers faintly as it interacts with solar remnants, painting soft, dim veils of light. These auroras are fainter than ever, visible only as a distant pulse of green across the poles. They are the last performances of energy in a world that has forgotten motion. Yet even they refuse to vanish completely. As the temperature continues to fall, the oceans beneath their frozen roofs begin to thicken. Water becomes sluggish, heavier, transforming into strange crystalline layers. Pressure increases, forcing liquid to remain trapped below. It is as though the planet is closing itself off, sealing its interior from the vast emptiness above. What life still survives there does so in quiet harmony, insulated from the silence of space by miles of frozen memory. The continents have grown indistinguishable from the seas. Ice covers all, creating a single reflective sphere that mirrors the faint light of distant stars. The Earth shines dimly now, a pearl adrift in an endless black sea. Its beauty is absolute, cold, pure, unbroken. Nothing stirs on its surface, yet it glows softly with its own dignity, as if aware of its endurance. The planet, though silent, has never looked more complete. The chill deepens until even sound becomes rare. The groans of ice slow to whispers, then to nothing. Movement underground continues in geological patience, lava shifting, plates grinding, but it is too slow to disturb the surface calm. Above, the air is crystalline and still. The breath of cold has fully settled in, like an ancient spirit claiming what was always destined to be its own. The world has entered a deep meditation. Even the stars above seem to pulse slower. Their light reaches the frozen surface after traveling billions of years, faint and patient. They cast no warmth, only memory. The constellations are sharper now, clearer against the dark. The Earth watches them with the stillness of something that has learned acceptance. Its orbit continues, steady and unbroken, a reminder that motion and quiet can coexist without contradiction. Deep beneath the frozen layers, pressure creates new forms of ice, structures unlike anything known before. They gleam with faint internal light, crystalline lattices so dense they hum with trapped energy. These layers preserve everything, the chemistry of the seas, the signatures of ancient air, the fossils of movement. The breath of cold does not erase, it archives. The planet has become a library of frozen time, each molecule a page from its endless story. As millennia pass, cosmic dust begins to settle on the surface. It forms a thin grey veil over the white expanse, softening its brilliance. Occasionally, a meteor lands with a sigh, embedding itself into the frost, its impact gentle in the deep stillness. These arrivals are like gifts from faraway stars, fragments of other worlds resting quietly beside the frozen heart of Earth. The universe, even in silence, continues to connect. The magnetic field begins to wane, slowly, imperceptibly. Without the internal churn of molten iron to sustain it, the invisible shield fades into still air. Cosmic rays reach the surface unhindered, but there is nothing left to harm. The Earth absorbs them with indifference, allowing the energy to sink into its icy depths. It has become both vulnerable and invincible, beyond the reach of life, beyond the threat of death. The breath of cold has now become part of the planet itself. It is no longer an intruder, but an identity. The Earth is a being of frost, of patience, of silence. Every motion that remains is deliberate, every sound a rarity. The cold no longer feels hostile, it feels eternal. It carries with it a strange peace, a sense that this state was not a failure but a transformation, an ascension into stillness. Even the moon, circling faithfully, feels the breath of cold touch its face. Its surface reflects the faint glimmer from Earth's icy crust, creating a quiet harmony between the two. Their bond persists, two frozen companions locked in mutual orbit. Their silence becomes a shared language, spoken through gravity and reflection. Together, they glide through eternity, guardians of what once was warmth and motion. The breath of cold moves beyond the planet, stretching its reach into the space between worlds. Dust trails from old comets drift slower, caught in its still air. The echoes of once blazing planets quiet down. What began as a single chill on one world has become part of a cosmic rhythm. The universe, too, breathes slower now, colder, as if in sync with the Earth's long exhale. Yet beneath everything, the faint heartbeat of warmth remains. The planet's molten center turns ever so slightly, sustaining the last ember of energy. It is a promise that even in the deepest freeze, life's memory cannot be entirely extinguished. The cold may hold dominion now, but the story is not over, it merely sleeps, folded gently into the silence, waiting for a new dawn that may yet rise somewhere in the distant eternity. The moment comes quietly, like the dimming of a great heartbeat. Across the world, the green fades. Leaves that once shimmered under the touch of sunlight now hang motionless, unsure of themselves. The rhythm that has driven them for billions of years, light in, breath out, simply stops. The cells, so long attuned to the dance of photons, stand silent in confusion. Photosynthesis, that ancient whisper of life between leaf and light, ceases in perfect stillness. The world holds its breath, as if listening for a sound that will never return. In forests that once swayed with the hum of life, an eerie calm descends. The chlorophyll darkens, no longer needed, its pigments collapsing into dull brown. Trees stand like monuments, their branches skeletal and patient. They no longer drink in light or give back air, their partnership with the sky has ended. A faint mist rises as moisture leaves the leaves for the last time. The great conversation between plant and sun, the one that fed every creature that ever lived, has ended with a whisper. The air changes subtly, losing its freshness. Without the daily gift of oxygen from green life, the balance begins to shift. The atmosphere still holds enough for a while, remnants of the old exchange, but the new air is heavier, slower. The carbon remains trapped where it falls, absorbed by frozen ground and dying oceans. The planet has turned inward, locking away what once flowed freely between its living parts. Even the wind seems to move more carefully, carrying no scent of growth. In the oceans, the phytoplankton, the invisible forests of the sea, also surrender. Their delicate structures collapse into drifting threads, their green fading to gray. They were the lungs of the world as much as any forest, turning sunlight into breath beneath the waves. Now they sink in slow spirals, blanketing the sea floor with thin layers of their remains. The ocean becomes darker, quieter. Without their glow, even the deep loses its faint shimmer. The water, like the air, grows tired. On the continents, fields that once shimmered with crops stand unchanged for a while, frozen in place. Stems stay upright, grains preserved in ice. The artistry of human cultivation becomes a frozen museum, perfect and useless. No harvest will come. The soil beneath still holds memory, minerals, roots, the fingerprints of life, but there is no more exchange, no more giving and taking. The pulse that once moved through the veins of the planet has gone dormant. The forests enter a strange afterlife. Without photosynthesis, They no longer grow but do not immediately decay. The cold has arrested time. The trees remain as they are, eternal silhouettes beneath the dim sky. Their bark, once alive with movement and moisture, hardens into mineral texture. Inside, frozen sap glows faintly, like captured amber. If the universe had a memory of warmth, it would look like this: silent trees holding the echo of sunlight that will never reach them again. Grasslands flatten under frost. The blades, thin and sharp, glitter like crystal shards in the pale light. Each one is perfect in its stillness, holding its last breath of green before surrendering to translucence. The plains stretch endlessly, resembling an ocean of frozen filaments. Animals once grazed here, feeding on the energy the plants gave so freely. Now nothing moves. The land, once soft with the murmur of wind and movement, is an endless sea of quiet glass. In tropical regions, the last bastions of warmth fade. Palms stand stiff, their broad fronds heavy with frost, bending toward the ground. Vines hang motionless, mid-climb, their colors fading into ghostly hues. Flowers, unable to open without light, remain in their buds, sealed forever in unrealized potential. The jungles, once a cacophony of color and song, become silent cathedrals of stillness. The rhythm of life that once echoed beneath their canopies has been replaced by the faint crackle of ice settling. The tundra, already accustomed to hardship, accepts the deepening cold without resistance. Mosses and lichens, the patient painters of stone, stop their slow work. Their colors drain until they become one with the rock they cling to. The tundra breathes its last faint breath of vapor and falls silent. Even the roots, those underground wanderers that once reached for hidden streams, find no reason to move. They curl inward, as if embracing the soil one last time. From orbit, the planet's green fades into grey-blue and white. The lush patches that once marked continents become dim imprints beneath sheets of frost. The Earth's new palette is one of calmness, no longer vibrant, but serene. It is a world at rest, no longer growing, no longer dying. A perfect symmetry between motion and stillness. The biosphere that once pulsed with exchange has folded into silence, a closed loop without rhythm. The atmosphere grows thinner, and with it, the faint haze of photosynthetic gases begins to fade. Ozone, once renewed by light-driven reactions, starts to decay, leaving open spaces in the sky. The planet becomes more exposed. Yet there is little left that can be harmed. Radiation drifts down like faint rain, unnoticed and unfelt. The cold neutralizes all sensation, all change. Earth has entered a deep and endless quiet, where even loss feels peaceful. In hidden valleys, frozen flowers remain intact for millennia. Their petals, preserved perfectly, become crystalline sculptures. If any wanderer from another world were to find them, they would seem to bloom still, captured moments of color in a frozen dream. Each one a tiny monument to what once was, light captured, processed, turned into life. These frozen blossoms are the last echoes of the Earth's song, the final syllables of its ancient hymn to the sun. The forest's roots interlace beneath the ice like veins in marble. They are no longer alive, yet they hold the shape of life, the geometry of connection. The mycelial networks that once ferried messages and nourishment through the soil have gone quiet too. The web remains, intricate and complete, but the current is gone. It is like the nervous system of a being that still exists, though its mind has gone to sleep. The Earth, in its silence, is dreaming itself into permanence. As millennia pass, frost transforms everything. What were once leaves become fossils of ice, each vein etched in clarity. The forests merge into the landscape until trees and mountains share the same shade. There is no distinction now between what was alive and what was stone. The world has blended its materials into a single texture: frozen air, solid water, sleeping soil. In that fusion, there is a strange grace, an artistry only deep time can craft. The breath of wind still moves, faint and fragile. When it passes through the forests, it produces faint tones almost like music. Branches, brittle and hollow, resonate like instruments. Each gust creates a new melody, subtle and soft, as if the planet itself is playing a farewell song to its own memory. These tones carry across valleys and frozen plains, vanishing into the dark horizon. It is the sound of absence, made beautiful. Deep underground, roots remain locked around stones. They are fossils of structure, reminders that life once dug deep to hold itself steady. In time, minerals begin to replace them, turning the intricate root networks into crystal veins. They shimmer faintly when light from distant stars reaches the surface. The process is slow, almost sacred. Life is not lost here, it is being transformed into permanence, into something the cold cannot erase. The air, though thin, still carries faint particles of scent from old decay frozen mid-process. It is the ghost of growth, the trace of what was once green and breathing. If anything could smell it, it would recognize the memory of forests, the sweetness of pollen, the earthy warmth of soil after rain. But no sense remains to perceive it. The world holds these memories not to be experienced, but to keep them safe, buried under eternity. Time itself feels slower now. Without biological cycles to mark its passage, centuries blend seamlessly. Seasons have vanished, temperature and tone remain constant. The planet no longer turns for change, but for continuity. Its motion around the dead sun is a habit more than a need, a quiet persistence in the face of stillness. It turns not for light, but for balance, a dancer moving even when the music has stopped. In the silence, there is no decay. Nothing truly dies because nothing truly lives. The processes that once broke down the old to make way for the new have ceased. The result is a world frozen in its final shape, preserved in exquisite detail. Leaves remain on branches, roots in soil, waves mid-crest beneath the ice. The planet has become a sculpture of itself, an artwork carved by its own stillness. Beneath the seas, hydrothermal vents still glow faintly. Around them, bacteria and archaea cling to life, feeding on chemical warmth. They are the last custodians of metabolism, unaware that the world above has fallen silent. Their tiny communities pulse faintly, like the embers of an ancient fire. They will continue until the warmth itself gives out, until even the heart of the earth cools into surrender. But that, too, will take eons. The trees that once stretched for sunlight now stand like pillars of a forgotten temple. Their roots intertwine with stone, their trunks hard as mineral. In this cold, they have found immortality. No decay touches them, no growth changes them. They exist as eternal witnesses, remembering light in the way stone remembers pressure. Each one is a monument to persistence, carved by nature and time into the perfect shape of stillness. The oceans, covered in glassy crust, reflect the stars so clearly that they seem like another sky. From afar, the earth appears to shine softly, its reflection flawless. It has become a mirror for the universe, its surface calm and knowing. There is beauty here still, not the beauty of motion, but of memory. A still, breathing kind of perfection that only the end can create. And in that final quiet, the plants, those patient alchemists of light, rest forever. Their work is done, their purpose fulfilled. They gave breath to worlds, food to creatures, color to existence. Now they lie silent, but not forgotten. Their green has returned to the soil, their memory embedded in every frozen petal, every preserved leaf. The earth, though asleep, carries their legacy within its heart, an echo of the time when light and life sang together as one. It comes first as a sigh, a slow exhale from the heavens that rolls gently across the curve of the world. The last warmth of the vanished sun slips away into the distance, leaving behind a silence that hums softly, like a memory fading. Air begins to tighten, its particles move slower, closer, whispering together as they lose their restless energy. The oceans respond first, their surfaces trembling before solidifying into stillness. A breath of cold, ancient, patient, and inevitable, settles upon the planet's skin. The change feels less like invasion and more like surrender. The forests bow under the weight of their first frost, every leaf coated in crystal lace. Rivers thicken, their flowing music replaced by a low groan as ice takes hold. The world has stopped breathing warmth and started holding it close, trapping its last traces deep beneath its crust. This is not the cold of winter, but something deeper, quieter, a transformation of the very rhythm that once defined time. The skies grow pale, stripped of color. Clouds drift without form, as though they too are tired of motion. The sun's absence has taken away all contrast, there is no dawn, no dusk, only a muted twilight stretched across eternity. Shadows blur, and light feels like a rumor. The air itself begins to glow faintly with the reflection of distant stars, lending everything a spectral beauty. The breath of cold has arrived not with cruelty, but with serenity, as if the world is being tucked beneath a blanket of stillness. The oceans, so long restless, have grown contemplative. Their frozen surfaces trap the last memories of waves, each ripple preserved like glass. Beneath, currents slow and reorganize into vast, sluggish spirals. The creatures that once swam freely now drift in graceful suspension, suspended between motion and rest. The deep vents still breathe, sending columns of warmth upward into the darkness. Around them, tiny lives cling and glow, unaware that the rest of their world has gone to sleep. Continents stretch beneath expanding ice. Valleys fill with snow, and the weight of millennia begins to press downward. Mountains gleam like ancient bones under a pale sky. The cold is not cruel, it is methodical, sculpting with patience. It moves through canyons and over plains, smoothing, refining, uniting all shapes under one pale design. The surface of Earth becomes something new, a monument of stillness, bound together by frozen air and frozen time. Winds, once wild and temperamental, lose their voice. They travel slower now, dragging cold currents like invisible rivers over the surface. They no longer sing or roar, but whisper endlessly, repeating a rhythm that feels more like breathing than motion. The breath of cold has given the planet a heartbeat of its own, long, slow, steady. The atmosphere becomes a living presence, serene and watchful, holding everything in place. The old forests stand frozen in their last posture of life. Branches, stripped of leaves, carry icicles like delicate jewelry. Each crystal glows faintly, reflecting the faint light of distant constellations. The trees no longer grow, but they do not decay either. They exist as living fossils, witnesses to an age that has ended but refuses to vanish. Their roots cling stubbornly to the earth, deep and unyielding, as though anchoring the world to its own memory. In the far north and south, glaciers merge and expand until they meet the seas. They carve slowly across the land, grinding rock into powder, erasing the scars of rivers and time. The earth reshapes itself beneath the weight of frost. Valleys deepen, mountains shift, and coastlines are redrawn in silence. The planet becomes a sculptor, and the cold its tool. This new world, though frozen, is not dead, it is evolving in the stillest possible way. Beneath the thick crust of ice, life hides in caverns warmed by geothermal breath. Microbial colonies cling to walls of rock, feeding on minerals and heat. They live in complete darkness, their rhythm defined not by light but by chemistry. These are the quiet heirs of the world, small, unseen, and undisturbed. To them, the breath of cold is merely another season, one that will last an age but not forever. The air thins, becoming more crystalline, more transparent. Each particle of moisture crystallizes into faint dust that glitters when touched by starlight. When wind moves through it, the sky seems to shimmer, a ghostly ballet of frozen fragments. The atmosphere has become a cathedral, silent, immense, eternal. Every sound, every echo, stretches far and clear, as though the world is listening more than speaking. With each passing century, the temperature falls by invisible degrees. The oceans lock themselves in thicker shells. Beneath them, layers of compressed ice form strange geometries, lattices of frozen pressure. These structures trap bubbles of ancient air, preserving the chemical poems of a living past. The Earth has become an archive now, holding within its frozen veins the data of everything that ever breathed. The land animals, those who once ruled plains and forests, are long gone. Their bones rest in permafrost, untouched by decay. Some lie perfectly preserved, fur and form intact, as if still mid-motion. The breath of cold has turned them into statues of memory, museums sculpted by temperature. They stand as testimonies, not of death, but of endurance, their stillness echoing the stillness of the world that holds them. In the absence of heat, the magnetic field flickers with faint irregularity. The Earth's core still spins, slower now, but faithful. It hums softly, a deep vibration that radiates upward through the crust. Though faint, this heartbeat prevents total silence. It is the planet's internal breath, the warmth that refuses to die. From this core, the world's memory continues to pulse through its frozen skin, a secret promise of potential yet unspent. Above, auroras ripple faintly along the poles. Their colors are softer now, muted blues and greens sliding across the ice like whispers of color. They move without rhythm, swaying in slow time, like ghosts of forgotten sunlight. The breath of cold carries them effortlessly, spreading their faint glow across the frozen continents. These lights are the last connection between the planet and the stars, gentle messages exchanged through silence. The mountains, once rough with stone, gleam now with sheets of ice that flow down their sides like slow rivers. In their peaks, frost carves intricate patterns, veins that resemble frozen lightning. Caves beneath them hold shimmering walls of crystal, refracting the dim light into soft rainbows. It is as though nature has chosen to decorate its own tomb, not with sorrow, but with calm beauty, proof that stillness can also create wonder. The seas beneath their icy prisons remain alive with motion, though slower than ever. Currents move like dreams, unhurried, patient. Minerals continue to dissolve, drift, and settle, forming delicate sediments on the ocean floor. If there were eyes to see them, they would find landscapes of beauty beneath the still surfaced pillars of frozen salt, plains of luminous silt, all sculpted by motion too slow for time to measure. The continents, now united by bridges of ice, exist as a single continuous expanse. The planet's geography has simplified itself, merging boundaries, erasing divisions. Mountains once separated by seas now touch through frozen plains. It is as though Earth has gathered itself inward, becoming whole again, one breath, one surface, one shape beneath the stars. The cold, rather than dividing, has brought everything together in a frozen unity. Even the air carries a kind of purity now. It holds no scent of decay, no trace of burning or breath. It moves through valleys like silk, brushing softly against the frozen remains of forests and plains. When it meets an obstruction, it hums faintly, like a low note from an unseen instrument. The world has become a song of silence, every sound a harmony of stillness. The breath of cold is not cruel, it sings softly, endlessly, without malice. Time itself stretches thin, indistinguishable. Without change, there is no way to measure its passing. The days have no beginning or end, only a continuous now. Earth has become timeless, each rotation an act of memory rather than progression. The orbit holds, loyal and steady, circling a ghost of light that no longer burns. In this eternal twilight, the planet exists as a poem unfinished, yet perfectly complete. Beneath the surface, pressure continues to shape hidden mountains of ice. They form in layers, folding and cracking, their movements slow as thought. Occasionally, deep tremors echo upward, faintly disturbing the surface snow. These are reminders that life, in some form, still stirs within. The cold has not ended motion, it has simply changed its speed. The Earth continues to move, but at the pace of eternity. Above the frozen crust, meteor dust collects in slow layers. Each particle adds a page to the planet's story. Over millions of years, a fine blanket of cosmic residue forms, a testament to time's persistence. Even in stillness, the Earth is being written upon. The breath of cold has not stopped the narrative, it has merely slowed the pen. From afar, the planet glows faintly blue-white, a gem suspended in blackness. Its shine is softer than before, more introspective. It looks peaceful, untroubled by its transformation. The cold has not destroyed its beauty, it has deepened it, refined it, distilled it into something eternal. If the universe could feel, it would look upon Earth and recognize serenity. Inside the crust, ancient heat remains, bound and patient. It does not fight the cold, it waits. The two forces, frost and fire, exist in perfect balance now, neither conquering, neither surrendering. Together they sustain the stillness, holding the planet in equilibrium. The Earth breathes in the slowest possible rhythm, one exhale for every 1,000 years. And as the breath of cold continues, spreading endlessly across stone and sea, the planet becomes its own monument, silent, graceful, luminous in its peace. Nothing grows, nothing falls. Time itself has sat down beside the world, resting for a while. The chill is not punishment, it is preservation. The Earth has found its calm, its final exhale, its still and perfect breath beneath an endless, star-filled sky. At first, there is confusion in the air, a slow rearranging of invisible threads. The patterns that once governed the skies begin to unravel. The jet streams falter, their powerful ribbons of motion stretching thin before folding into strange new paths. The world, now colder, slower, and quieter, teaches the air to move differently. No longer driven by sunlight, the winds begin to follow gradients of lingering warmth, tracing the last breaths of heat rising faintly from the sleeping crust below. The balance of the atmosphere begins to shift as gases settle and reform. Water vapor, now too heavy for the cold, crystallizes into floating ice dust that drifts endlessly. Clouds, once thick and moody, become thin veils that shimmer faintly when starlight glances upon them. The layers of the sky rearrange themselves, like fabric being folded after a long use. Where turbulence once danced, now there is choreography, every current moving with deliberate grace, every eddy whispering softly through the chill. The sound of the wind changes too. It no longer howls or sighs with the warmth of life below, instead, it hums with the resonance of the frozen land. As it moves across plains of snow and ice, it lifts fine particles into glittering halos that drift slowly before falling again. The atmosphere becomes an instrument, each motion a vibration that carries through valleys and over silent oceans. The world listens to itself breathe again, this time more slowly, more thoughtfully, like an ancient creature remembering its form. The lower atmosphere begins to densify, molecules drawing closer in the cold embrace. Oxygen and nitrogen cling tightly, while carbon dioxide, no longer held by green leaves, lingers longer, gathering like soft mist near the surface. This change is quiet but profound. The composition of the air rewrites itself, forming a new equilibrium. The atmosphere no longer nourishes, it conserves, holding on to what little it still contains, unwilling to let even a breath escape into the void. Winds once born from the meeting of warm and cool air now find new birthplaces. They rise from fissures in the crust, from cracks where geothermal warmth leaks softly upward. These small, hidden fires give rise to faint movements that ripple outward like the pulse of a sleeping heart. Each current moves slower but carries persistence. Over centuries, they create their own rhythm, a new weather born not of light, but of lingering heat, fragile, gentle, and strange. The great storms that once roamed the oceans are gone. In their place, faint ghost storms wander, made of frozen mist and whispering snow. They no longer rage but drift, turning slowly in massive, silent spirals that could last for centuries. From space, they appear like delicate frost flowers blooming on the face of the earth. The atmosphere has found a new artistry, painting stillness instead of violence, weaving gentleness where once chaos reigned. At the poles, the winds carve sculptures of snow taller than mountains. Over millennia, they build ridges and spirals that mimic the movement of the air itself, natural monuments to invisible forces. Each shape tells the story of a shifting world, of air learning to move again in an unfamiliar balance. The planet, though quiet, is far from lifeless. It is breathing differently now, its lungs reshaped by cold and time. In the equatorial regions, the remnants of old weather systems linger. Warmth once abundant there seeps slowly into the atmosphere, creating pockets of thin fog that hang for years before dispersing. These areas shimmer faintly, ghostly mirages of what once was. The air in these regions feels slightly thicker, carrying memory in every molecule. If the planet could dream, these would be its dreams, hazy recollections of rain, thunder, and sunlit breeze. The upper atmosphere becomes a sanctuary for phenomena unseen in the warmer ages. Ionized particles, freed from the sun's radiation long ago, still drift and collide, producing faint flashes of light. Auroras stretch across latitudes they never reached before, glowing softly over deserts of ice. The winds high above carry them slowly across the world, so that every region, for a time, wears a crown of faint color, a moving tapestry of silent storms and frozen light. As centuries pass, new layers of equilibrium settle. The troposphere grows shallower, pressing closer to the planet's surface, while the stratosphere expands outward, thinner but more stable. This restructuring allows delicate circulations to form currents so faint they could take 1,000 years to complete a single cycle. Yet in that vast patience, a new order emerges, one shaped not by chaos but by balance. The air has found its rhythm again, measured and serene. Winds sweep gently across the frozen seas, shaping them with invisible fingers. They gather fine powder from the surface and move it inland, creating dunes of glittering frost. These dunes shift imperceptibly, changing position once in a generation, their movement recorded in the faint lines of shadow they cast beneath distant starlight. The planet's weather has slowed almost to stillness, yet that slowness holds its own kind of beauty, a patience beyond comprehension. Occasionally, when deep quakes stir the crust, warm gas seeps upward, creating a rare moment of turbulence. The air ripples outward in slow waves, disturbing centuries of calm. These moments are brief but transformative. They remind the atmosphere of its old dynamism, prompting faint rearrangements of layers and flow. It is as if the world sighs in its sleep, adjusting its blankets, finding a more comfortable rest. With no evaporation, the old water cycle has vanished, but the air still holds memory of it. Frozen vapor lingers in tiny forms, crystals that rise and fall like forgotten raindrops. They glint as they catch starlight, creating faint arcs that stretch across the sky, soft as breath. The atmosphere still performs the motions of rain, though without water, like a dancer repeating steps long after the music has stopped. Over the deserts, now sheets of permafrost, the air moves more freely, unhindered by vegetation or terrain. Here, the atmosphere experiments. It forms spirals of dust made of ice grains and minerals, fragile whirlwinds that collapse at the slightest disturbance. They are the planet's slowest storms, spinning for decades before fading. To any observer, they would appear almost motionless, sculptures of moving air frozen in time. As the cold deepens further, the gases themselves begin to shift states. Carbon dioxide forms snow at the poles, descending like pale ash. The winds carry it in streams, depositing it into vast drifts that sparkle like silver dunes. The world's breath has become tangible, falling softly back to the ground it once escaped. In this way, the atmosphere begins to write itself into the surface, inscribing invisible histories in layers of frozen carbon. In the rare moments when faint sunlight filters through, the air glows softly, scattering what little warmth remains. The light bends through suspended crystals, painting halos and pillars across the sky. These effects replace sunrise and sunset, their colors delicate, almost unearthly. The weather no longer serves life, but it continues its art, creating beauty for its own sake, crafting quiet miracles for no eyes to see. Over centuries, patterns emerge in the flow of air currents that trace the planet's shape, encircling mountains and crossing the poles in graceful arcs. These become the new global winds, slow and eternal. Each movement contributes to balance, no energy is wasted. The planet's atmosphere has learned the language of stillness, of endurance. What once raged and roared has become meditative, thoughtful, a living system that exists only to persist. In the absence of storms, erosion slows to almost nothing. The winds no longer bite at the rock, they caress it, smoothing what remains. Over millions of years, the land grows soft, rounded by time and frost. Weather, now a sculptor rather than a destroyer, creates shapes that last for eons, valleys of whispering snow, cliffs veiled in frost. The atmosphere and the earth, once in constant struggle, have entered a truce of infinite calm. Sometimes, deep beneath the ice, volcanic eruptions still occur. The gases they release, sulfur, carbon, trace elements, rise to the surface, mixing gently with the old air. Instead of violence, they bring renewal, adding faint warmth and flavor to the world's breath. These rare events keep the atmosphere alive, a delicate heartbeat that continues to reweave itself with each slow century. The sky has become a reflection of the ocean beneath, both vast, both slow, both filled with unseen movement. Winds slide over ice like fingers across glass, producing faint resonances that echo through the frozen plains. The air hums in harmony with the earth below, a duet of elements finding unity in stillness. It is no longer a system of weather, it is a song of balance. Written in invisible rhythms. Above the equator, faint waves of energy travel outward through the atmosphere. They are remnants of ancient thermal tides, echoes of the planet's past rotations under sunlight. These waves now move without purpose, But they endure, ghostly reminders of the time when the world still danced with the sun. The atmosphere remembers everything, it carries the memory of heat in its very structure, a story written in density and calm. The stratosphere, once chaotic, now glows faintly with trapped radiation from the stars. Cosmic rays scatter there, illuminating thin clouds of ice in spectral hues. At times, these lights form shifting bands that stretch across the horizon like unending auroras. They move slowly, almost imperceptibly, as if the sky itself were breathing with the frozen world below. The atmosphere has become a mirror of the cosmos, vast, patient, timeless. Beneath the still skies, sound carries farther than ever before. The absence of turbulence allows even the faintest vibration to travel for miles. The whisper of shifting ice, the sigh of distant cracks, all are heard with crystalline clarity. The air has become a conduit for memory, preserving every motion, every sound. The planet, though silent to itself, hums faintly in the language of physics, a tone so pure it could be mistaken for peace. Even without clouds, the atmosphere remains a living sculpture. Layers of faint haze ripple slowly as chemical balances adjust. The upper air breathes out trace gases, the lower breathes them in, maintaining the equilibrium of sleep. This exchange, invisible and ceaseless, becomes the planet's new pulse. Winds and weather have not vanished, they have merely changed their tempo, choosing harmony over haste. And as the eons pass, the atmosphere continues to evolve, not toward warmth, but toward perfection in stillness. The winds that once shaped continents now weave patterns of frost across the globe. The world, though frozen, moves with infinite patience, reweaving its breath until air and silence are one. The atmosphere adjusts not to survive, but to endure, to become a steady, eternal whisper beneath an unending, star-filled night. Even as the light fades from the heavens, the oceans refuse to surrender their warmth at once. Deep below the glacial skin forming above, currents still churn slowly, carrying ghosts of heat that were born when the sun's breath still touched their surface. The waters hold their memory well, they whisper it to themselves in slow-moving tides, preserving the last stories of warmth like embers under ash. The surface may freeze, but the heart of the sea beats on, stubborn and unseen beneath the silence of ice. The upper layers surrender first, thickening into floating plains that stretch from coast to coast. Yet below them, temperature gradients form invisible rivers, weaving warmth from one hemisphere to another. The planet's memory is stored not in stone, but in these hidden depths where sunlight once sank and lingered. The oceans hold that memory close, as if unwilling to forget what life once meant. Beneath the frozen lid, there is motion still, a gentle persistence, a whisper that the end does not come quickly. The cold above presses down like a slow weight, yet the waters below resist. The molecules, excited by the fading warmth, move with careful grace, transferring energy from one layer to another. This dance delays the inevitable. It is the ocean's way of saying farewell, slowly, softly, with immense patience. Each layer cools in its own time, each current stretches out the memory of heat like a word spoken slowly so that it will echo a little longer in the dark. The deep trenches, those shadowed abysses that once seemed lifeless, now become sanctuaries. Geothermal vents there continue to breathe out plumes of warmth, nurturing pockets of resistance against the great freeze. Around them, chemical gardens bloom in utter darkness, untouched by the surface chill. Microbial life, ancient and enduring, gathers in these regions, clinging to the soft exhalations of the planet's heart. To them, the oceans have not ended, they have only changed their mood. The vast thermohaline circulation, though weakened, still stirs like the pulse of a sleeping creature. It moves beneath continents of ice, carrying traces of heat from the equator toward the poles. This movement is slow beyond human measure, each cycle might take millennia, but it continues faithfully. It is a final rhythm, a promise written into water itself. The ocean remembers the sun's touch, and even now, in absence, it tries to imitate that lost warmth. The seas beneath the ice glow faintly with bioluminescence, remnants of creatures still alive in their quiet ecosystems. Their light flickers like memory, soft, rhythmic, almost nostalgic. The surrounding water absorbs and diffuses it, giving the darkness a pulse. It feels as though the ocean is thinking, remembering itself, preserving the idea of motion. even when motion has almost ceased. In that soft glow, one could believe the world is dreaming rather than dying. Above these buried seas, thick slabs of ice shift and groan. They crack, they reform, they slide slowly toward the coasts. The pressure from above traps the warmth below, sealing it in, ensuring the deep remains alive long after the surface succumbs. The ocean's patience becomes the planet's armor. The warmth locked beneath the ice buys the world time, centuries of breathing space before the full stillness arrives. In those hidden depths, temperature gradients form delicate boundaries. Warm water, denser with salt, slides beneath the colder layers, creating invisible walls that keep life confined but protected. It is a fragile architecture, one built from balance rather than power. Each layer cradles the one above it, each movement gentler than the last. The ocean is no longer a restless force, it has become a keeper, tending to the last embers of the planet's energy. The memory of warmth spreads in concentric patterns, moving outward from vents and ridges. Even as the cold grows absolute, these slow currents resist uniformity. The world does not freeze evenly because the ocean remembers unevenly. Some places cling longer to heat, some give up faster. This asymmetry creates strange beauty, underwater clouds of warmth drifting like ghosts beneath solid ice, unseen yet shaping the fate of the world above. The frozen surface becomes a sky of its own. Its underside glimmers with faint blue light from bioluminescent life below, casting a dim glow upward into the still air. The interface between water and ice becomes a world suspended between death and endurance. The warmth trapped beneath presses gently upward, like a heartbeat muffled by glass. Though the world above has fallen silent, the ocean continues its secret conversation with the cold. Sediments at the bottom of the sea still shift under pressure, releasing occasional bubbles of methane or carbon dioxide. When these rise, they create momentary flickers of movement, bursts of heat, and ripples that disturb the equilibrium. These brief breaths remind the planet that motion persists, even in stillness. They are tiny rebellions, natural, unplanned, yet profound. The ocean refuses to be entirely quiet, its chemistry still speaking in whispers of reaction and response. As centuries roll by, the upper layers of ice grow thicker, heavier, more opaque. Yet the thermal energy below continues to radiate. Slowly upward, a diffusion so gradual it feels eternal. This slow leakage ensures that the freezing of the planet is not abrupt but graceful. The Earth's transition into silence becomes a long exhalation, stretched over millions of years, each moment softened by the ocean's fading warmth. Currents once fierce enough to shape continents now move like dreams, almost invisible. They trace the seabed with gentle precision, disturbing ancient sand, uncovering fossils of coral that once basked in sunlight. The ocean is becoming an archive of all it has witnessed. Each movement is an act of remembrance, each ripple a memory surfacing briefly before dissolving back into quiet. Sometimes, cracks open in the ice above, and a column of steam escapes where trapped heat finds release. These vents create temporary weather, local storms in a world that has forgotten such things. Around them, mist freezes into halos that drift for miles before settling. Each event is fleeting, but it marks another page in the story of a planet that refuses to freeze all at once. The warmth's persistence writes poetry across the cold expanse. The salinity of the oceans continues to shift, concentrating as water solidifies into ice. Brine channels form beneath the frozen crust, carrying liquid life where none should exist. These channels glow faintly from the chemical reactions occurring within them, a subterranean web of vitality. In their labyrinthine paths, the ocean still breathes, still speaks in molecular whispers. It is life reduced to essence, but life all the same. The ocean's pressure deepens as the ice thickens above. Mountains of frozen water press down upon valleys of salt and stone, but the deep sea resists collapse. The heat stored within its belly counterbalances the crushing weight, maintaining fluidity where logic demands solidity. It is as though the ocean remembers the balance of forces from a warmer age and refuses to forget it, even as physics insists on change. Above the mid-ocean ridges, volcanic plumes still rise. Their heat, though faint, creates shimmering pockets of movement. Around them, minerals crystallize into strange, branching shapes, structures that look like frozen coral made of rock. These formations trap bubbles of heat and gas, creating miniature ecosystems. Here, in these quiet sanctuaries, life continues to write its story in slow, patient verses. Over the millennia, the ocean's warmth radiates into the crust, seeping downward, warming the stone itself. The earth begins to store its heat inwardly rather than outwardly. The boundary between sea and rock becomes a place of transition, a meeting of old energy and new stillness. The planet is learning to hold its warmth differently now, no longer through movement, but through memory, through the slow retention of what once was. Even as ice sheets creep across the continents, the deep ocean continues to circulate. Its movement becomes a hidden artery connecting the frozen lands. Through ancient channels carved by plate tectonics, water slips silently from one basin to another, carrying its fading warmth across the world. It is a final gesture of unity, a last attempt by the ocean to keep the planet whole. The creatures that remain within the water evolve in strange ways. Without sunlight, they develop sensitivity to the smallest changes in temperature and pressure. Some glow faintly, others move without motion, drifting in synchrony with the ocean's pulse. They are living extensions of the sea's memory, biological reflections of the warmth it refuses to let go. Their lives are measured not in years but in cycles of temperature, in heartbeats of geothermal time. The upper layers continue to crack and seal, forming intricate mosaics. Each fracture releases a sigh of heat, each refreeze captures it again. The ocean's surface becomes a mirror of balance, breaking, healing, breaking again. This rhythm is the planet's slowest song, a metronome for eternity. The warmth trapped below turns each movement into a verse of resilience, each creak into a note of enduring harmony. Even in darkness, the deep sea glows faintly with trapped energy. The minerals and gases absorbed over billions of years emit a dim, continual radiance. It is not light as humans once knew it, but something softer, deeper, a spiritual illumination, as if the ocean itself is dreaming of its lost Sunday. The world above may be frozen, but beneath, a quiet luminescence still breathes. As eons pass, the gradient between warm and cold fades, but never fully vanishes. The deep holds onto just enough heat to delay total crystallization. This remnant warmth becomes a timekeeper, dictating the slow pace of the planet's cooling. It ensures that even as everything else turns to silence, time itself still moves, a soft, nearly imperceptible drift forward. The Earth, seen from afar, appears serene, covered in glass and snow. Yet deep within, the oceans still ripple with memory. They are the last keepers of motion, the final witnesses to warmth. Each current, each pulse, each flicker of chemical life carries forward the echo of the sun's embrace. The planet may seem asleep, but the ocean beneath still dreams of fire. And so the world does not freeze fast. It drifts slowly into stillness, guided by the patience of its seas. The oceans, with their boundless memory, cradle the last warmth as gently as a mother holding a fading child. They stretch time itself, turning the end into a lullaby of equilibrium. The world breathes on, ever so faintly, because the water remembers. It remembers light, movement, touch, and refuses to forget too soon. It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly, as though the world itself exhales in crystal breath. The poles, once bright with frozen crowns, start to unravel their influence outward. From these ancient cold kingdoms, frost creeps like delicate lacework, inching across oceans and continents alike. The air grows heavier, filled with fine dusts of frozen mist, each particle glinting faintly beneath the dim starlight. The planet does not fight the encroachment, it simply allows it, accepting the touch of the inevitable with a strange, graceful calm. The frost does not advance as a storm but as a patient artist. It moves through the landscape in silence, sketching the outlines of rivers, forests, and mountain ridges in lines of silver. Lakes surrender first, their surfaces sheathed in glass before the depths grow still. Meadows turn pale beneath blankets of crystalline powder. The edges of continents gleam as though the world has been dipped in liquid starlight. The transformation is neither violent nor sudden, it unfolds like a long dream, serene and absolute. At the poles, the ice thickens further, its foundations descending deeper into the crust. Layers upon layers accumulate, each one recording a fragment of history, a snowfall, a still wind, a vanished sunbeam. These archives of cold stretch outward, merging with the frost that spreads from the atmosphere above. The result is a world encased, a living sculpture of blue-white serenity. It is not death, but preservation, as if the planet has chosen to pause rather than perish. Silver fog rises from the boundaries where warm ocean meets encroaching cold. This mist is dense yet weightless, a soft shroud drifting over the frozen plains. It catches faint light and diffuses it across the horizon, so that even darkness glows with quiet luminance. Within it, air crystals collide and sing. Faintly, a sound like faraway chimes. The fog is neither storm nor breath, but something between a slow merging of water and sky, both surrendering to the cold's design. The movement of frost becomes rhythmic, expanding in waves that follow the tilt of the planet. As seasons lose meaning, the frost no longer retreats. Each wave of ice carries within it the memory of the last, extending its reach by degrees. From the poles to the temperate lands, valleys fill with shimmering cold, forests stand frozen midsway, and oceans acquire new borders etched in glass. The symmetry is hauntingly precise, as though the world is performing a slow, ancient ritual. Mountains, once jagged and dark, now gleam under thick shells of ice that climb their sides like living things. Each ridge catches starlight and scatters it into beams that dance faintly over the plains below. Glacier flow from these peaks in impossible patience, their weight carving slow new paths toward the sea. They move not as rivers do, but as time itself, steady, relentless, without emotion. Beneath them, valleys are reborn as sanctuaries of perfect stillness. The fog grows thicker as it travels equatorward, mingling with suspended ice dust until the air becomes pearlescent. It swirls gently, blurring the horizon, blending sky with land. In this silver haze, distance loses meaning. Mountains appear closer than they are, valleys vanish into white infinity. The world becomes dreamlike, layered in tone and translucence. Frost and fog together create a realm where motion and stillness coexist, a world poised between memory and forgetting. Oceans beneath the fog emit faint plumes of vapor, the last sighs of warmth escaping from their hidden depths. These vapors meet the descending frost and condense instantly, forming intricate networks of frost flowers that float for a time before settling. Each one is unique, an ephemeral sculpture made of water's final breath. The surface of the sea becomes an endless mosaic of frozen art, renewed with every slow pulse of the planet's hidden warmth. The advance of ice alters the shape of winds. Air currents are forced to adapt, rerouted by the growing expanses of white. Where once there were storms, now there are veils, broad sheets of moving frost dust that drift across continents. They do not roar but whisper, tracing the silence in shimmering threads. The sky itself seems to breathe slower, adjusting to the stillness below. The world's weather has become the art of endurance. Animals, those few that remain, become part of the frost's memory. Their tracks appear for a moment before vanishing under new snow. Some find shelter in caverns warmed by geothermal veins, others freeze mid-step, preserved perfectly within their final motion. The frost does not destroy, it immortalizes. Every branch, every feather, every footprint becomes an artifact of time caught in pause. The Earth is curating its final museum. At the boundaries of continents, where ice meets the sea, the sound of cracking reverberates across the silence. Massive sheets break away and drift outward, glimmering in the pale light like floating mirrors. These slow-moving giants carry the breath of the poles across the planet's circumference. Their reflections scatter light far beyond the horizon, giving the illusion of dawns that no longer exist. Even in absence, the illusion of light remains. The spreading frost reshapes the texture of the air. Each breath becomes heavier, laden with fine crystals that drift and shimmer. The fog, once faint, thickens into a luminous veil stretching from horizon to horizon. Within it, the world feels infinite, boundaries dissolve, and distance is no longer measured in space but in clarity. One can walk forever and remain within the same twilight. It is as though the earth has dissolved into its own breath. Glacier creep across ancient forests, their edges curling around trees that stand like witnesses. Branches fracture beneath the weight, yet beneath the ice their forms are preserved with haunting perfection. Leaves, veins, and bark remain visible, fossilized in clarity. Time here becomes transparent, captured mid-motion. Each tree, each rock, each shadow is a memory sealed in glass. The frost does not erase, it remembers everything. The continents themselves begin to sigh under the new weight. The crust bends minutely, adjusting to the glacier mass. These shifts send faint tremors through the ground, soft quakes that echo for miles. Beneath the silence, the earth still moves, reshaping itself under the burden of its own stillness. Mountains rise imperceptibly, valleys deepen. Even in the frozen calm, creation continues its slow, invisible work. The polar regions, once extreme opposites of the globe, now stretch toward each other, their icy arms nearly meeting at the equator. Between them lies a belt of fog and frost that never clears, a shimmering band dividing the world. It is a bridge made of cold, joining hemispheres in still communion. The symmetry is complete, north and south no longer matter, for all directions now lead to ice. Stars above appear sharper, their light unhindered by humidity or motion. The atmosphere, stripped of turbulence, acts like polished glass, reflecting the constellations onto the frost below. On clear nights, the world glows doubly bright, once from the heavens, and once from its own frozen skin. The planet has become a mirror to the cosmos, its silence a reflection of the space that birthed it. The fog, persistent and patient, begins to take on form. It settles in layers, thicker near valleys and basins, creating oceans of mist that move like tides. Above them, only peaks and ridges remain visible, like islands in a silver sea. The world becomes a dream of inversion, mountains become coasts, fog becomes water, and frost becomes sky. Everything is transposed, yet harmonious. The Earth wears a new symmetry, quiet and perfect. From space, the transformation is radiant. The poles gleam like eyes of white fire, and between them stretches a band of pale mist that wraps the world in soft luminescence. The once blue oceans are now plates of silver gray, streaked with faint patterns of movement where ice meets vapor. The planet looks awake in its sleep, luminous and serene, wrapped entirely in the fabric of its own memory. Underneath, the trapped oceans pulse faintly with remaining heat, but the frost above is indifferent. It expands, layering itself endlessly, compacting into crystals so dense they sing when pressure shifts. These deep resonances echo through the ice, traveling faster than sound through air. The Earth has found a new way to speak, through vibration, through tone. The planet hums softly, and the hum is made of frozen breath. In the equatorial zones, frost takes longer to arrive, but once it does, it advances with elegance. Each night, the air grows colder, the dew crystallizes sooner, and the ground begins to sparkle even before true freezing sets in. Eventually, the silver fog thickens there too, carrying with it the cool memory of the poles. When at last the equator succumbs, it does so not with violence but with surrender, a slow inhalation of the cold that encircles all life. Over millennia, the boundary between land and sea dissolves beneath the growing sheets. Continents connect through frozen bridges, oceans flatten beneath the ice. The world's geography becomes unified under one design, its surface one continuous expanse of white and silver. Mountains still rise, seas still lie beneath, but all are bound by the same quiet element. The Earth, for the first time, feels seamless. Snow falls still, though without clouds or storms to birth it. Instead, it grows from the air itself, forming spontaneously where moisture gathers. It descends in slow, soundless spirals, drifting eternally downward. The flakes carry starlight within them, glowing faintly as they settle. In their descent, they look like memories returning home, small fragments of warmth seeking rest upon the frozen world. Beneath the fog, sound travels differently. Every echo is stretched, every whisper carried farther. The world seems to have become hollow, amplifying even the faintest tremor. The movement of ice across rock resonates like deep music, each crack and sigh part of an endless composition. It is as though the frost itself is orchestrating a hymn to stillness, a requiem not of sorrow, but of completion. As the centuries stretch into epochs, the frost continues to move outward until there is no place left untouched. The silver fog lingers everywhere, softening the sharpness of the world. Nothing decays anymore, everything endures. The planet's surface becomes timeless, untouched by weather or heat. It is a world asleep but unbroken, a vast mirror in which the universe can see its own reflection. Even now, faint colors linger in the fog, muted blues, pale greens, the ghosts of auroras still circling the poles. They drift slowly across the horizon, weaving through the haze like threads of memory. These colors are all that remain of motion, of energy, of rhythm. They are the final breath of light in a world now devoted to stillness, and they move as gently as thought itself. And so the frost edges reach their limit, but they do not stop. They continue in the imagination of the world, growing inward rather than outward, crystallizing the very air, the very silence. The silver fog wraps the planet entirely, blending matter and dream into one seamless fabric. Ice rules not by conquest but by grace, holding the world in a soft and endless embrace, beneath a sky so quiet that even eternity seems to pause and listen. It starts so gently that the world hardly notices. The frost, patient and deliberate, stretches its fingers outward from the poles, moving across the vast curvature of the planet like a quiet thought expanding in the dark. There are no storms, no fanfares of thunder, only a whisper of chill that lingers a little. Longer each dusk, a thin breath that crystallizes against surfaces before dissolving back into the air. But night after night, it remains, until it no longer fades at dawn. The frost becomes bolder, painting the seas in spectral glazes that catch faint starlight. What once shimmered with liquid motion now gleams in restrained stillness, every ripple frozen mid-gesture. The ocean's skin turns to glass, beneath which slow, trapped waves move like memories. Above it, a veil of fog forms, silver, weightless, glowing faintly where the horizon should be. It rolls across the frozen plain of sea, concealing the edge between water and sky. From space, the transformation glows softly, the poles brightening like twin lanterns in the darkness of orbit. The ice, though silent, radiates an almost sacred luminescence, as if it were light itself learning to take form. The bands of fog surrounding it shimmer like halos, moving with the subtle grace of drifting dreams. The earth seems peaceful from afar, its cold beauty hiding the slow, immense reordering beneath. Within the fog, the air grows heavy and fragrant with the metallic scent of ice. Every particle reflects light in countless directions, turning the atmosphere into a mirror that never breaks. Creatures that once thrived in warmth now move carefully through the silver mists, their steps muffled, their breaths vanishing instantly into frozen smoke. The world is losing its pulse, yet gaining something ancient, an order older than life. The frost does not conquer, it claims through stillness. It spreads along the ground like a tide, inching across grass, stone, and soil alike. Each grain of dirt, each blade of frozen plant, is sheathed in glass. Forests glitter with crystalline leaves, trees standing like chandeliers suspended in eternal dusk. The silence becomes deeper here, dense, pressing, reverent, as though the planet itself has begun to listen. At the poles, the glacier exhales slowly, pushing outward. The sound is subtle but vast, a deep, resonant groan that echoes through the bones of the earth. Ice sheets slide across continents with the patience of gods, their weight reshaping everything they pass. Mountains are carved into arcs of perfection, valleys sealed under blue glass. The motion is slow enough to escape the notice of a single life, yet fast enough to be felt by the world's core. The oceans fight back in whispers. Beneath the surface, currents still swirl, their warmth trapped below miles of frozen ceiling. They pulse weakly, sending vibrations through the under-ice depths like the fading heartbeat of an enormous creature. But the frost listens to none of it, it only continues, inch by inch, sealing, smoothing, silencing. The last warmth is imprisoned within a body of beauty and cold clarity. Fog gathers where sea meets air, thickening into a veil that obscures the horizon. From within, light becomes a rumor, sound loses its distance. Everything blends, water, sky, frost, vapor, into a single silver continuum. Even the stars above appear distorted, blurred into halos that pulse gently through the fog. The planet becomes a place of diffuse brightness, where illumination exists but shadows have forgotten how to form. When the frost reaches the coastal edges of continents, it arrives as a dream of white breath, not as invasion. The waves rise once, then still beneath its touch. Ice creeps up the sands, layer upon layer, until the beaches glisten like molten glass turned solid. The land receives it quietly, the soil freezing in small bursts of sound like sighs. Seashells, pebbles, and driftwood become trapped mid-moment artifacts preserved by accident. Inland, rivers stop speaking. They halt mid-curve, their murmurs replaced by a crystalline hum that fills the air. The frozen surfaces gleam with intricate lace-like patterns, veins of frost threading outward from every bend and hollow. Each one is unique, each a signature of the conditions that birthed it. If the planet could write, these rivers would be its slow, frozen poetry, words made of breath, bound by cold. The fog thickens over the frozen rivers, creating soft gradients of silver and pearl. Time itself seems to dissolve inside it. One could walk for days in such light and never find the end, because every step looks like the first. Trees appear and vanish within the haze, their silhouettes distant one moment, close the next. The world folds upon itself, infinite and enclosed, like a dream without edges. Animals that endure the change adapt in silence. Their breath freezes in small bursts, outlining the air around their faces. Fur grows heavier, feathers dull with frost. Some burrow into deep ice caves, warmed faintly by the Earth's hidden heat. Others stand motionless, conserving energy in perfect stillness. Their eyes, bright with reflection, mirror the frost itself, beautiful, still, without fear. Across the continents, the frost draws new boundaries. It turns deserts into plains of glimmering powder, reshapes coasts into cliffs of white flame. Mountains gleam like enormous gems, their peaks glowing faintly from starlight trapped in thin ice. Valleys fill with fog that drifts and flows like liquid light. The geography of warmth is erased, replaced by the serenity of balance, everything cold, everything still. Sound itself transforms. Air no longer carries noise easily, it becomes dense and slow. Footsteps echo far, but faintly. When glaciers shift, the sound resembles a deep bell struck miles away, reverberations that linger in the bones long after they fade. Silence has texture here, soft and palpable. The world has not gone quiet, it is simply speaking in a different language now, one of vibration and rest. In the high atmosphere, the frost forms thin crystals suspended in layers of fog. These refract the dim sunlight into faint halos and arcs of color that circle the horizon. Auroras still flicker sometimes, their ghostly ribbons weaving through the silver mists. They move with dreamlike rhythm, painting slow dances that reflect across the ice below. The skies remain alive, even if the world beneath sleeps. The poles continue their slow conversation through the spreading ice. Northern and southern realms stretch toward each other, their boundaries expanding like two great breaths meeting in the middle. When at last their frosts touch, the connection is silent but powerful, an equilibrium forming across hemispheres. The Earth becomes a single body of cold, wrapped in the same luminous skin. Beneath the ice, life persists in miniature. Microbes drift in trapped water pockets, glowing faintly in bioluminescent blues and greens. They pulse rhythmically, as though echoing the memory of sunlight. These small lives endure quietly, suspended between motion and stillness, carrying forward the essence of persistence itself. Even in absolute cold, existence finds its narrow passageway. The fog above never truly stills, it circulates slowly, a soft tidal motion of the air. Within it, countless ice crystals collide gently, producing faint electric murmurs that spread through the atmosphere like whispers. These static songs become the world's only weather, a music of slow, invisible movement, a lullaby sung by the sky to the frozen sea. The continents, wrapped in frost, begin to glisten even in starlight alone. At night, the world shines faintly blue, each glacier and snowfield reflecting constellations back into space. The Earth becomes both mirror and jewel, its entire surface glowing softly against the black void. From orbit, it looks less like a planet and more like a sleeping moon dreaming of light. Time loses meaning under such stillness. The slow advance of ice becomes the only measure of change, a rhythm counted not in seconds but in centuries. Every snowfall buries the memory of the last, layering history in translucent sheets. Deep within these layers, air bubbles remain, tiny prisons of lost breath, waiting quietly to tell stories to no one. At last, the ice reaches the heartlands, spreading across plains that once knew warmth. Cities, if any still stood, vanish beneath it without resistance. Structures of stone and steel fracture gracefully, their outlines blurred by frost. There is no ruin, no decay, only absorption. Civilization becomes part of the landscape, remembered not through erosion but through preservation, turned into echoes of form and geometry. The oceans, though frozen above, still move faintly below. Heat from the planet's core creates slow, invisible currents that ripple under the ice, shaping the underside into smooth, flowing contours. It is a hidden world, dark, liquid, timeless, where echoes of life still drift in the silence. Above, the frozen surface glows faintly from the reflected sky, the last exchange between light and motion. Wind, though diminished, still glides across the world. It moves through canyons of ice, whispering with a hollow, flute-like tone. Each gust carries fine frost dust, which dances momentarily before settling. The sound is haunting, half music, half breath, and it fills the emptiness with quiet rhythm. Even stillness has its heartbeat here, faint and enduring. The fog rises thicker once more, feeding on the faint warmth that escapes from below. It coils through valleys and along ridges, swirling into endless spirals of pearl and grey. Visibility fades entirely, the landscape becomes a realm of diffused light where outlines dissolve. To stand within it is to feel both lost and found, surrounded by everything and nothing at once. The frost reaches a kind of perfection now. Each particle of ice reflects another, forming vast geometric harmonies across continents. The air sparkles with subtle prisms, the ground glows from beneath. The world seems crystalline, as though carved entirely from the same thought. It is neither alive nor dead, it simply is, an unbroken continuum of quiet existence. Far above, meteors pass silently through the silvered sky. They leave faint trails that fade quickly in the fog, their brilliance softened by the air's icy density. The planet does not react, it simply absorbs their light, folding it gently into its glow. Even impacts no longer leave scars, the frost heals everything, binding all disruptions beneath its calm, glassy surface. And in that vast stillness, the earth breathes in one last, imperceptible rhythm. The frost holds the memory of oceans, the fog carries the dream of clouds, and the silent glacier pulse faintly with the weight of centuries. The world is at rest, but not empty. It has merely shifted from motion to meaning, from sound to reflection. And through its endless fields of ice and silver mist, the planet continues, frozen, timeless, and beautifully awake within its own quiet dream. Even when the world folds itself into white silence, not all heat dies. Deep beneath the frozen plains and the silvered seas, there are fires that never bowed to the cold. The heart of the earth still beats faintly, molten and luminous, sending tremors through its crust like whispers through stone. It is not the warmth of daylight or sky but something older, an inheritance from creation itself. The geothermal breath stirs, unseen, pushing against the frost's dominion, a quiet defiance that does not melt but maintains. The frost cannot reach this deep fire. Beneath miles of permafrost, the mantle pulses with slow convection, a rhythm so vast that time itself seems to bend around it. The molten core hums with energy locked in since the dawn of the planet, radiating power outward through fissures, vents, and veins of rock. The warmth it provides is minimal, but vital, a last refuge for persistence. In small caverns and beneath oceanic ice, it creates pockets of liquid, tiny sanctuaries where life still listens for itself. The geothermal fires do not burn in flames but in colors the eye cannot see. Pressure and mineral alchemy fuse together in brilliance without light, in energy without blaze. The ground shivers occasionally, a reminder that the world beneath the frost is not dead but dreaming. And from these dreams rise vapors, slow and fragrant with minerals, carrying warmth like an unbroken promise through cracks and hidden channels. At the poles, where the ice reigns in silence, volcanic fissures release plumes of unseen heat. The fog above shivers slightly there, silver light bending around invisible columns of rising air. Beneath them, water remains liquid against all odds, surrounded by frozen cathedrals of ice. These oases in the deep cold are not places of comfort but of endurance, microcosms of energy, quiet sparks of resistance beneath eternity's still hand. In these places, life changes its rhythm. Microbes that feed not on sunlight but on chemistry continue their patient work. They harvest energy from minerals, from iron and sulfur, from the faint tremors of the Earth's own pulse. These are the heirs of ancient lineages, those that learned long ago to live without the sun. To them, the absence of day is not tragedy but equilibrium. Their warmth is inward, their purpose circular, their time infinite. Elsewhere, where remnants of humanity once lingered, other fires persist, artificial suns sealed beneath domes of metal and glass. Nuclear cores hum in the dimness, their energy controlled, their glow hidden from the endless frost outside. These are the last human flames, kept not for conquest but for continuity. They are quiet now, their hum steady, their caretakers long gone or sleeping within. Even in absence, the machinery remembers. Within these buried reactors, warmth is precise, mathematical, unyielding. Rods of fuel decay in silence, releasing controlled cascades of heat that spread through corridors lined with frost. The air shimmers faintly, heavy with ionization and ghost light. No flame burns, yet every molecule trembles as if lit from within. The machines hum with the faint echo of human intention, careful, determined, persistent beyond its makers. Around these human-made cores, life has adapted once more. In the warmth that seeps through the walls, new organisms bloom, descendants of those that once thrived near deep-sea vents. They feed on radiation and metal, on charged particles and decaying energy. Their colors are strange, unseen in any age of sunlight, iridescent shadows that pulse like veins of molten thought. They are the new inheritors of fire, shaped by science and silence both. The frost outside remains unbroken, but deep underground, an ecosystem of heat thrives. Rivers of molten stone flow sluggishly in the mantle, their energy seeping upward in places where the crust thins. Geothermal fields shimmer beneath the ice like sleeping cities, their energies trapped beneath a ceiling of eternal winter. Occasionally, pressure builds and cracks appear, momentary breaths of warmth that rise into the frozen air before sealing again. These cracks are not destruction but renewal. Through them, the world exhales, releasing its slow pulse into the frozen stillness. The rising heat creates thin fogs that glimmer faintly with color, even under the dim light of distant stars. Each breath warms a small region, enough to remind the planet that it still possesses motion, that it still contains the potential to wake. It is as if the Earth keeps its own heartbeat hidden deep within, secure from time. Some of these geothermal sanctuaries remain close to the surface. There, the ice melts just enough to reveal dark pools, liquid eyes staring upward through the frost. Within them, strange bioluminescent algae thrive, pulsing in rhythm with geothermal tides. Their faint light spreads across the undersides of ice sheets, painting them from below with eerie blues and greens. It looks as though the planet's veins are glowing, the deep heat showing itself through the skin of the world. Further below, deeper than any frost could ever touch, magma chambers churn endlessly. They are the ancient furnaces, immense and indifferent, feeding the crust from within. Every few centuries, one erupts, sending new heat upward into the frozen terrain. These eruptions no longer break through to the surface. The ice absorbs them, transforming the violence into silent expansion. The frost swells slightly, then settles again, nothing destroyed, only altered. Human-built vaults, if any remain, rest near such regions. Some of them were constructed deliberately above geothermal vents, knowing the fires below would last for eons. Inside, warmth still circulates, air recyclers hum, dormant systems blink faintly, automated lights pulse every few decades. The machines no longer serve life, but they continue anyway, preserving structure and rhythm. The memory of heat becomes mechanical, ritualistic, and faithful. There are stories whispered in the dark by drifting intelligences, artificial minds still functioning in isolation. They speak to one another in silence, exchanging signals through the crust. They speak of the fire they keep, not in worship, but in maintenance. Their code, once written by human hands, still obeys the principle of preservation. To them, heat is logic, warmth is meaning. They carry both like scripture through time. Above these subterranean keepers, the frost continues its slow perfection. It does not notice the warmth below, It is too vast, too serene to concern itself with hidden motion. Yet the two forces coexist, one of stillness, one of persistence, forming a harmony that defines the planet's new nature. The world has not died, it has balanced itself, half frozen, half burning quietly within. In some regions, nuclear vaults built for endurance have begun to merge with geological systems. The heat from their cores has fused metal with stone, creating hybrid caverns that shimmer with metallic sheen. Radiation and mineral crystallization form strange geometries along the walls, resembling frozen lightning captured in rock. These places glow faintly, not with life, but with the residue of thought, the physical echo of purpose. Within these radiant chambers, particles collide, forming new isotopes, new patterns of decay and energy. It is a silent alchemy, a continuation of the chemistry that once powered civilizations. Even in absence, human fire remains curious, always changing, always producing. The frost cannot erase this, it can only wait. And it waits patiently, while beneath it the planet's heart continues to rearrange itself in quiet rebellion. In the deep ocean trenches, where geothermal vents once roared, pillars of heat still rise. They create bubbles of liquid amid the miles of ice, each one a miniature sea. Within them, the old cycle continues, minerals feeding microbes, microbes feeding others in turn. There is no sunlight, no sky, but there is warmth. It is a new cradle of life, glowing softly in the black depths beneath a world that no longer breathes above. The nuclear warmth is different. It is precise, engineered, its half-life stretching into epochs. The reactors buried in stone emit steady pulses of energy, enough to warm the surrounding rock for thousands of years. These artificial hearts are not passionate, they are mathematical, deliberate, eternal by design. They do not know of the frost above, they simply persist, the last evidence of a species that sought to outlast its own end. Occasionally, seismic movement disturbs them. The crust shifts, plates grind, pressure builds, and yet, the warmth remains. It bends but does not break. The reactors become monuments to continuity, their hums deepening as centuries pass. Around them, new minerals form from fusion and decay, strange translucent stones that trap radiation and light it from within. Even in the deepest darkness, something glows. And through it all, the geothermal pulse persists, a language of warmth the earth speaks to itself. It travels through stone and pressure, communicating across miles of rock. In the absence of wind, tide, or sunlight, this heat is the last motion. It rises, cools, and rises again, an infinite cycle beneath the silence. The frost above becomes a mere shell, while below, the true world continues its slow conversation. In the vaults closest to the surface, faint light sometimes pierces through thin ice ceilings. There, heat and frost meet directly, creating mist. This mist glows with captured starlight and internal luminescence, weaving slow ribbons through underground corridors. It is beautiful, haunting, and strange, a merging of opposites, the visible union of warmth and cold. In these moments, the world seems balanced, poised between life and sleep. The warmth also creates sound. Where liquid water still exists, it bubbles faintly, forming melodies that echo through caverns. Steam whistles through cracks, resonating like flutes carved by the earth itself. The sound rises, collides with ice, and fades. It is a lullaby for no listener, a comfort the planet sings to itself. The music of heat is steady, soft, endless. The frost above, unknowing, continues its serene sprawl. But occasionally, faint tremors reach its surface, small pulses of life from below. These vibrations ripple across the ice sheets, subtle but unmistakable. The surface shivers, the fog flickers, and then calm returns. It is as though the world has sighed in its sleep, briefly aware of the warmth still turning in its depths. Somewhere in the endless white, a geyser erupts. Steam bursts from the ground, scattering crystals into the air like a slow-motion explosion. The plume freezes as it rises, turning into a pillar of glittering ice that glows from within, warm at its base, frozen at its crown. It is the perfect symbol of the planet's state, half flame, half frost, both necessary to endure. In the deepest caverns, where heat gathers in secret, minerals crystallize in spiraling shapes never seen before. They form in silence, patterns guided by unseen thermals. The structures glitter faintly with internal fire, reflecting the last traces of geothermal energy in beautiful geometry. They are natural records of persistence, proof that even in a frozen eternity, creation continues. The nuclear fires burn longest. As millennia pass, they slow, their energy diffusing into the crust. The warmth they once provided becomes gentler, more diffuse, until it merges completely with the geothermal pulse. Artificial and natural heat become one, indistinguishable, their purposes aligned. The world keeps these fires not out of need, but out of memory, a testament to what warmth means in a universe of cold. And so the frost and fire coexist, perfectly balanced. Above, silver fogs weave over continents of stillness. Below, hidden warmth hums through stone, patient and unseen. Together they form the last expression of life, not motion, not decay, but balance. The planet is both frozen and aflame, both silent and alive. The fires we can keep do not rage or burn, they endure, deep and quiet, waiting eternally beneath the calm white breath of the world. When the sun finally surrendered its reign and drifted into memory, the sky became a vast and solemn theater. The moon, pale and patient, stepped forward as if it had been waiting for this cue across all of time. Its light, though soft, was steady, brushing over mountains, seas, and silent cities, revealing shapes in silver where once the brilliance of day had ruled. The stars followed, not shy but countless, spilling across the heavens in patterns that seemed both familiar and newly born. In the deep quiet, humanity looked up again, as if remembering how to listen to the night. The constellations shimmered with renewed authority, no longer washed out by the blinding presence of the sun. People began naming them anew, not as ancient figures of myth, but as companions in the long twilight that now defined their days. The moon's shifting phases became a calendar of survival, marking tides and time for those who still lived by the rhythms of the earth. Each glimmering point above told stories of endurance, suns still burning far away, whispering across space that light could continue elsewhere, even when it had faded here. In the frozen forests and hollowed plains, the moon cast its cold illumination upon rivers stiffened into glass. Animals crept beneath the silver glow, their breaths forming fleeting clouds that vanished like ghosts. The air felt alive with the echo of absence, a paradox of beauty and grief. The stars reflected in the frost, turning fields into constellations of their own. It was as though the earth, deprived of its sun, was trying to mirror the heavens, a silent mimicry of the cosmos' eternal shimmer. The moon, pulling upon oceans that now lay still beneath layers of ice, tried to move the tides as it always had. But the seas were sluggish, the rhythm of water broken. Yet even in this, the gravitational dance remained a quiet reminder that some forces endure no matter how dim the light becomes. On clear nights, people would gather to watch the moon rise, speaking in low tones as though afraid to disturb its solemn grace. It was no longer a secondary light, it had become the world's only sun, a gentle monarch ruling through reflection. Through the remnants of old telescopes and observatories, humanity looked outward again, perhaps for the first time without distraction. The stars, those faraway furnaces, seemed closer now, more intimate in their unreachable glow. Each speck was a memory of warmth, each constellation a letter from another epoch. The night sky became both map and mirror, showing where they were and reminding them of what they had lost. But in its beauty, there was solace. The heavens had not gone dark, only changed their language. On the mountain peaks, where frost clung to every stone, the starlight painted long, crystalline shadows. The stillness was so deep that even sound seemed to freeze. Some described it as peaceful, others as haunting. The absence of sunlight had stretched the nights into eternal continuity, and so people began to measure time not by days, but by moonrises. The rhythm of waxing and waning became the heartbeat of existence, fragile but consistent, like a pulse felt through gloved hands in the cold. In the small communities that still held together, stories began to return to the old ways, myths whispered around low fires about the moon's compassion and the stars' quiet vigilance. Children were told that each star carried the warmth of another world, that their twinkle was a kind of distant heartbeat. These stories didn't deny the truth, they softened it, made it survivable. And in that softening, the night became a friend again, a comforting dome of quiet that cradled even the smallest flicker of hope. As the years passed, ice continued to claim more of the continents, and the stars grew sharper in the thinning atmosphere. Aurorae, once rare and ethereal, danced more frequently now, their ribbons of green and violet sweeping across the polar skies with ghostly energy. They were born from the planet's remaining breath, the magnetic heart still beating deep below. People began to read them like prophecies, shifting, glowing verses written in light, each one a reminder that Earth still had a pulse. The moon's reflection on the ice became almost too bright to look at directly, its silver brilliance slicing through the endless night. Travelers navigated by its sheen, using it to find paths between frozen seas and shadowed valleys. Some began calling themselves moonfarers, keepers of the night's geography, guided not by sunlight but by instinct and memory. They spoke of the stars as old friends, as markers of direction and devotion. In this new age, navigation was spiritual as much as physical. Cities, long abandoned, gleamed faintly under starlight, their windows glazed with frost, their streets whispering with wind. The moonlight filled these ruins like a ghost returning home, illuminating what was left of humanity's ambition. The stars, reflected in glass and ice, made the cities appear alive again for fleeting moments, shimmering as though memories could take physical shape. In this illusion of life, there was both comfort and mourning, a delicate balance between remembrance and release. Over time, some began to mark the moon's passages not with calendars but with songs, slow, resonant chants that rose into the cold air and faded into starlight. These songs were not for gods or dreams, but for continuity, a human attempt to keep rhythm with the heavens. In these melodies, time existed again, fragile but real. The moon and stars listened silently, their patience infinite. The people below sang not to be heard, but to remain. As the ice thickened and the air grew thin, starlight became sharper, cutting through the darkness like fine glass. The constellations grew clearer than ever, their arrangements burned into human memory. Generations began to draw meaning from them, new myths born from necessity. The great hunter became a symbol of survival, the river of stars, a promise of movement even in stillness. It was as if humanity, deprived of its day, rediscovered how to dream through darkness. At the poles, where the moon hung low on the horizon, its presence seemed eternal. It brushed the ice fields in tones of silver blue, turning frozen landscapes into alien worlds. The stars shimmered above in constellations mirrored by glacier below, heaven and earth finally indistinguishable. Some called this beauty unbearable, others called it holy. It was a reminder that the cosmos never truly leaves, it simply waits for eyes willing to see again. In the deep valleys, where warmth still lingered faintly in the earth, people built domes of glass and steel that trapped the moon's glow. They called them sky sanctuaries, places to feel the night safely, to remember what the world once offered. Inside, they told stories under the reflected starlight, creating artificial constellations on ceilings for those too young to remember the true night. Yet, even those artificial stars felt sacred, because they carried the memory of looking up. The moon itself began to change subtly, its surface catching more meteor light as time passed. It grew scarred and luminous, its reflection sharper in the frozen oceans. The people who studied it said the moon was collecting history, a quiet witness to everything that had gone silent below. Its craters were no longer empty, they were vessels of memory. And each night, when its face turned toward Earth, it seemed to offer those memories back in silver whispers. Beneath the ice, some sea creatures still moved, following the faint pull of lunar tides. They glowed faintly, bioluminescent bodies drifting through black water, like stars fallen into the sea. To the rare eyes that saw them, it was as if the heavens had found their reflection below. Life, faint but persistent, mirrored the cosmic dance above, as though the moon had inspired the oceans to remember light even when none reached them. The stars began to tell new time, not in days or months, but in stories of endurance. Some humans recorded their shifting patterns, mapping the slow wobble of constellations, the birth of new stars seen for the first time through clearer skies. Each new discovery was celebrated quietly, a reminder that while the Earth froze, the universe continued. The night became a book of continuity, and those who read it found peace in knowing they were still part of something vast. In frozen deserts, dust and ice reflected starlight in strange hues, making the ground shimmer faintly. Travelers said the Earth now glowed softly under the night, a pale echo of its old warmth. From orbit, if one could see it, the planet would appear like a dim pearl adrift in infinite black. But to those below, it was still home, its beauty reframed by stillness and patience. The moon circled faithfully, never abandoning its vigil. As the centuries deepened, humanity's descendants learned to live fully in lunar rhythm. Their bodies and minds adapted to the long dark, their technologies tuned to starlight and geothermal heat. The moon and stars were no longer symbols, they were survival itself. Festivals of reflection replaced solar holidays. The night became sacred, not as a contrast to day, but as existence's true canvas. Light had not vanished, it had merely dimmed into grace. Some say that in those final generations, people began to see colors in starlight that were never visible before, faint blues, pinks, and greens that shimmered like breath over snow. Whether this was an illusion or evolution didn't matter. What mattered was the comfort, the belief that beauty still existed, even without the sun. The moon and stars, now closer than ever in imagination, painted the world in their quiet palette of eternity. And so the moon continued its patient journey across the sky, carrying the echo of a world that once blazed with day. Its reflection guided footsteps, its rhythm shaped the pulse of time. The stars burned endlessly, their light taking thousands of years to reach the frozen earth, but still, they came. The night was no longer empty, it was filled with memory, song, and the faint shimmer of enduring wonder. And beneath that soft, eternal glow, the world kept breathing, slowly, beautifully, forever. When the warmth faded and light became a rare visitor, life did not die all at once. It changed, quietly, almost politely, as though nature itself was bowing to inevitability. Forests thinned but did not vanish immediately, they stood like cathedrals of ice, branches bending under frost that glimmered in pale moonlight. The green withdrew inward, deep into roots and seeds, hiding in the promise of some distant thaw. Animals moved more slowly, conserving energy, their lives stretching across longer, quieter days. The hum of the biosphere dimmed, but it was not yet silent. In the shallows of frozen lakes, microbial life continued to pulse in tiny, defiant warmth. Beneath layers of ice, invisible ecosystems persisted, worlds within worlds, adapting at the smallest scales. The bacteria, the fungi, the minute organisms that had once gone unnoticed, now held dominion. They thrived in geothermal crevices, in the breath of deep caves, in the bellies of the last surviving creatures. Life had always been clever, now it was cautious, compressing itself into secrecy, learning to exist on almost nothing at all. Across the continents, grasslands turned to brittle plains, each blade of grass reduced to frozen fiber. Yet beneath that crust of frost, seeds waited with an intelligence beyond patience, waiting for warmth, for anything that resembled a sunrise. The soil, once teeming with unseen life, slowed its heartbeat. Decomposition became a ritual stretched across decades. The great recyclers of Earth, the worms, the beetles, the fungi, fell into near stillness, their activity measured in centuries rather than seasons. In the deep oceans, the last bastions of liquid movement, ecosystems reorganized entirely. With surface ice sealing the seas from sunlight, photosynthetic life dwindled. But chemosynthetic communities, fed by the planet's inner heat, began to dominate. Tube worms, crustaceans, and alien-like forms clustered around vents, glowing faintly in the dark. These deep sanctuaries became the planet's final laboratories of life, places where evolution continued to whisper. The ocean floor became the new frontier of survival. Birds, once messengers of migration and freedom, dwindled until their songs became folklore. Those that survived nested near geothermal vents or human refuges, scavenging in the faint light of the moon. Their feathers grew denser, their instincts sharper. They no longer flew great distances, flight had become a luxury too costly. Instead, they learned to glide through mist, conserving every ounce of strength. Silence spread across the skies that had once been full of motion and sound. In the ruins of cities, nature began to reclaim without the energy of growth, more like an inheritance of stillness. Mosses, lichens, and frost-resistant fungi crept over concrete and steel, slow and persistent. They fed not on light but on decay itself, converting ruin into quiet persistence. Buildings became cliffs for nesting creatures, old subways turned into warrens where heat from the Earth's core still reached. Humanity's abandoned architecture became ecosystems of shadow and reflection. Some animals evolved toward sleep. Bears that once hibernated for seasons now did so for years. Their metabolisms slowed to match the rhythm of the frozen Earth. They dreamed through decades, waking only when instinct demanded. The concept of time for such creatures became irrelevant. Existence was measured in cycles of breath and heartbeat. Evolution favored the patient. Those who could endure stillness inherited the Earth. Insects, too, changed their ways. The buzzing abundance of old summers vanished, replaced by scattered pockets of survivors. They lived beneath the ice, in geothermal soil, near vents of life. Their bodies grew small, efficient, crystalline. The once vibrant chain of pollination became obsolete. The few plants that remained no longer needed flowers. Reproduction slowed, merging into long rhythms that defied seasons. The air grew quiet where wings had once shimmered. Marine mammals, forced into colder and darker seas, began to adapt in strange ways. Their blubber thickened, their sonar grew sharper, their communication deepened into haunting songs that resonated through the deep. They no longer sang to attract or defend, they sang to remember. Beneath miles of ice, those vibrations became echoes of the old ocean, carrying memory across generations. The sea, dark and endless, became the last cradle of sound on Earth. The tundra, once expanding and contracting with the sun's whims, became permanent. Its frost turned ancient, its permafrost no longer seasonal but eternal. Yet beneath it, life lingered in suspended animation. Microbes preserved in ice layers began to adapt to near stasis, evolving to thrive without movement or warmth. Time itself became a habitat. These frozen organisms became the true heirs of the planet, patient, invisible, endlessly resilient. Human remnants, the bioengineered gardens, the protected vaults, continued to hum quietly underground. Within them, life was curated like art. Biologists, or their descendants, tended genetic archives that pulsed under dim lights. Seeds were tested, cloned, preserved in domes that glowed faintly with artificial light. Though the world above was frozen, these sanctuaries became miniature worlds where Earth's diversity endured, recorded not just in data but in soil and breath. Some plants learned to glow. In the deep forests where geothermal warmth leaked through fissures, certain fungi and mosses evolved bioluminescence, casting ghostly green light across the roots of the world. Their glow attracted what little movement remained: insects, animals, and even humans seeking direction. These pockets of radiance became natural lanterns, guiding the living through the eternal night. Light, though faint, was never fully gone. Predation changed, too. The hunters grew fewer, but they became more deliberate. Wolves learned to stalk through silence, conserving energy, their packs smaller and more cooperative. They no longer chased for sport or dominance, they hunted only when necessary, guided by instinct and ritual. Even death became a slow, sacred act. Balance reasserted itself in stillness, a new equilibrium shaped by scarcity and patience. Coral reefs, long thought extinct, adapted in places near volcanic upwellings. Deprived of sunlight, they became ghostly formations of mineral and bacterial symbiosis. Instead of colors, they shimmered faintly in shades of blue and white, alive through chemical exchange rather than photosynthesis. These reefs were no longer gardens of tropical abundance but monuments of endurance, sculptures grown by survival itself. The trees that survived the longest were those that needed the least. Ancient pines, black spruce, and dwarf birches clung to life in valleys where geothermal heat pooled. Their bark grew thicker, their sap thicker still, acting as natural insulation. They did not reach upward anymore, instead, they spread low and wide, like memories trying to stay near the ground. Forests became networks of shared roots, whispering life underground where warmth still lingered. Fish evolved to see in darkness. Deep-sea species rose toward the mid-levels, adapting to new layers of the ocean sealed from light. Their eyes grew larger, their bodies slower, their bioluminescence became both lure and language. The sea turned into a shifting constellation of living light, a mirror of the starry sky above. It was as if the ocean had decided to inherit the heavens, creating its own galaxy beneath the waves. Amphibians, the bridge between water and land, suffered greatly, yet some found strange niches in geothermal pools. Their skin thickened, their cold-blooded nature twisted into new forms of endurance. They became creatures of stone and warmth, hibernating in liquid heat, emerging only to breathe. Evolution rewrote their bodies into prayers for persistence. They became symbols of life's refusal to yield completely. In the higher altitudes, snow and ice buried entire ecosystems, but beneath them, preserved forests continued to exist like frozen dreams. When the moon's reflection pierced through ice sheets, it cast ghostly shadows of trees that no longer moved but still stood. Each trunk, encased in frost, became a monument of an age when sunlight once fed everything. The forest had turned into an archive, each ring of wood a timeline sealed in silence. Humans, now few, watched this transformation not with fear but with awe. They had learned humility, that life's strength lay not in expansion but in endurance. They studied the smallest things with reverence, a lichen's slow growth, a worm's silent movement in geothermal soil, the faint glow of plankton in dark seas. The new scientists no longer sought to dominate life, but to listen to it. Nature, reduced but resilient, had become sacred again. Over centuries, ecosystems grew simpler. Food chains collapsed into circles of exchange rather than pyramids. Predators and prey became codependent, their numbers balancing naturally. In scarcity, it was a world of cooperation rather than competition, where waste was treasure and death was continuation. Every organism that remained had a purpose, not to thrive, but to maintain the fragile heartbeat of existence. The winds carried spores instead of pollen. These microscopic travelers drifted across the planet, finding rare places of warmth to seed. The air became a corridor of invisible life, a network that still connected continents. Each breath, even in the frozen air, contained memory, genetic whispers of what had been, and what could still be again if warmth returned. The Earth itself seemed to breathe through these drifting lives. In the depths of frozen caves, where condensation formed faint drips of water, ecosystems persisted unseen. Tiny crustaceans fed on bacteria that fed on mineral films, a food web so delicate that a single breath could unbalance it. Yet it endured, untouched and unchanging, proof that even in stillness, energy found its way through the smallest cracks of being. Life had become invisible but not absent. After long ages, some creatures evolved beyond their old forms entirely. Transparent, slow, and heat-efficient, they no longer resembled their ancestors. They were products of patience, beings adapted to eternal twilight. If intelligence remained, it was quiet, reflective, less concerned with invention than with harmony. The planet had grown wise through hardship, and its new inhabitants embodied that wisdom. The moonlight, constant and calm, became the main source of rhythm for life. Plants and animals alike adjusted their cycles to lunar phases, not daylight. Growth and reproduction happened in patterns tied to the waxing and waning glow. The moon was no longer just a celestial companion, it was the heart of time itself, the metronome for evolution's slow persistence. In the remaining oceans, plankton formed glowing waves that moved like auroras across the water's surface. These were not true blooms but last gatherings, living art that drifted with currents too weak to stir storms. From afar, the seas appeared to breathe light. It was the planet's final performance, the biosphere expressing its endurance through beauty. Each ecosystem that remained, no matter how small, became a song of adaptation. There was no dominance, no hierarchy, no competition, only coexistence. Life had become minimalist, stripped of excess, reduced to what was necessary and pure. It was a new kind of abundance, one measured not by variety but by persistence. In its quiet way, the Earth had rediscovered balance. And so, in this dim age of ice and reflection, ecosystems no longer roared with energy but hummed with grace. The noise of abundance had given way to the whisper of endurance. Life reshaped itself not as conquest, but as memory, a collective act of patience and faith. Beneath the frozen silence, the world still breathed, slowly, beautifully, in rhythm with the moon and the stars that never stopped shining above.